What are you doing?
Oh, good you're here. Help me out. My GM had the audacity to not let me play a dragon, so it's payback time.
Ugh, why must you be such an amateur? Especially when we've got this book.
Battlezoo Ancestry's Dragons. That's not a tome of curses.
It's even better. This book turns dragons into a playable class in 5e or in Pathfinder 2nd edition.
Yeah, thanks for trying, but my GM is still gonna say no. Dragons are just way OP.
Except this one is actually balanced, all thanks to a ritual called the Lux Eterna, which changes the way dragons grow into their full power. Therefore, PC dragons who went through that ritual can level up alongside an adventuring party.
Oh wow, I could really play a dragon.
You could play 45 different types of dragons. There are Dream Dragons, eerie guardians of the dreamland, Silver Dragons, righteous champions of justice, or Havoc Dragons, passionate artists.
Apocalypse Dragons, the spoilers and destroyers, bringer of pestilent plagues.
They each have their own lore, and over 200 feats to customize them.
Well, now I kind of feel bad about considering human sacrifice. Anyway, can I keep this?
Oh, you can keep this one. The hardcover comes with a free PDF, so I'm all good.
Whoa, thank you.
Nah, don't thank me. Just next time, maybe check out Roll for Combat's website. You know, instead of resorting to unspeakable horrors.
Hello.
Hey!
Hey.
We're
What's
just
up,
going
everybody?
over our arcs.
Yes, we were talking ARCS games and why it is it is going to win all the awards for Best Board Game of 2024 and why it is so worthy of all those awards.
Yeah, it's... Oops. I'm moving stuff around.
That's all right.
Derek, Melinda, it has been 2 weeks since you've been here, but it looks like everyone loves you. I see the comments. Everyone's favorite guest is Derek.
I mean, except for the people, of course, who hate me, but that's okay.
You know what? The
Everyone has
haters...
strong opinions.
Yeah, but the haters have gone. Like, it used to be like half and half. Like, half hated, half loved you. It's now like mostly love. I'd say it's like 80-20, maybe even 90-10. So,
Well, there we go.
What are you doing right, or what are you doing wrong, depending on your?
Maybe the people who don't like him stopped watching the show.
That's probably it.
yes,
It's actually it's probably that.
I think it's a selection. I think it's
Selection
a selection bias.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
I always think things are selection biases.
It's like, why do people like you anymore? Because they just don't watch. Oh, yeah, well, that makes sense. But that's not what happened with Howard Stern, because people who hated him watched it more than people who liked him. So who knows?
The thing that is very polarizing about me or confuses people is I'm very opinionated.
No.
But I also don't care.
Oh.
Right? Like, I'm like, this is the greatest game. I'm like, this is the greatest game ever. And someone's like, I hate that game. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. And you're like, you're not upset, Derek? And I go, no, of course. You can totally hate that game. There's a lot to hate about that game. And they go, wait a second, you just said it's your favorite game ever. How can you possibly say that there's a lot to hate about it? I'm like, oh, because it has so many fundamental flaws. You wouldn't even believe it. Trust me, nobody knows how flawed that game is other than me. And they're like, but you're criticizing something. That must mean you must hate it. And I go, no. It means I'm really engaged with it and I like it a lot. And that confuses people. That's very confusing.
Well, I'm not getting in the middle, because if someone says that I like it and they hate it, I'll say why I like it and almost want to find out why they hate it, and then and after that I don't care. I'm like, whatever, Not everyone can like everything.
Yes. Well, yes, thank you, chat. That was a lot of fun getting Tundalus on the stream. And unfortunately, he was like, we can go as long as you want. And I was like, you say this, but you got to be prepared. And so we went for like 4 hours. And when we got off, he was like, oh my God. He's like, I'm dead. I'm dead. How do you do this? And I was like, I'm sorry.
4 hours. I started watching it, but then after a while, I got a COVID shot, and oh my God.
Oh, it kicked your ass?
It kicked my ass. I was so tired. I'm cold and sick.
My first booster that I got after the initial inoculation, the first booster I got that night, I remember just like being in bed, like shivering, like it messed me up real bad. But then I was so nervous about the second booster, and that one was fine. And now I got to get my third. So,
oh man, well, yeah, this was well, I went to go get, because like everyone I guess is getting the flu. And then my wife's like, oh, did you get your flu shot? I'm like, no. And so I went to go get the flu. He's like, oh, too late. And he goes, A, it's too late. And B, it didn't work. So they missed, because they guess on like what the dominant strain will be. And they said,
right.
They said they
got
totally
mine,
missed.
But I usually don't get the flu, but I
always do. I just forgot. And then so while I was there, I got COVID. And then, oh boy, was I not good. Not good.
You got COVID vaccination.
Vaccination.
Yeah. No, it, like I said, mine one was rough. Anyways, you guys did not come here to hear us talk about inoculation.
No, we did not. In fact,
you came here to hear us talk about the topic that you saw on there. Is D&D not cool anymore? Which might seem like it was just typical Steven putting something up on the thumb, but this is seriously a topical thing. It's actually a quote from Mike Mearls, who was one of the creators of D&D 2014 5e, and like the thumb was actually close to like the article of like the article title of an EM World article. That one just said Mearls : quotes, and then put that in there.
Yeah, so to lay a groundwork, Ben Riggs has been doing a series where he basically talks with industry people, and the audio quality is pretty bad, and the video quality is worse. I'm just saying it is. It is. It really is.
I'm not disagreeing with you at all.
Hey, come on, Ben, you got money. Make it happen, okay, buddy. Anyways, that's just me, picking. But he basically takes a passage from a book, and it's just a very free form conversation. Tangents are welcome. So he had Mike Mearls. A video went up 2 days ago. It's an hour-long conversation between Ben Riggs and Mike Mearls, who, of course, no longer works for Wizards of the Coast / Hasbro. He's working with Chaosium. And they started talking about the Wish spell, and then they just started talking about a bunch of other stuff. They started talking about AI in our TTRPGs. They started talking about OGL controversy and how that led to...
By the way, we're going to talk about that because he said something that will make it... He said a couple things about OGL. I'd say 95% of what he said was totally wrong, and we'll get into that. But then 5% was new information that kind of...
5% was like genius analysis that clearly clearly explains where a lot of it was coming from.
Yes. But then he started talking about how the landscape of RPGs, TTRPGs in particular, has sort of changed, as time has gone on, as we've made distance from both the pandemic and the OGL fiasco, and talked about what is the implication for that for the industry and specifically for the D&D brand, including this idea of, has D&D lost its cool factor? Then they talked about the challenges around, what does that post D&D cool world look like? I think there's a lot to discuss there. I will start by saying I don't think D&D was ever cool.
Well, I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna follow up with it. Why I chose this topic. Mike Mearls actually kind of very succinctly said this, and it is very interesting living in a post-geek world, being the age that I am. Is that, and you too, Derek, and Mark as well, because we are old enough to remember when D&D was not cool, when being a geek was not cool, when reading comic books, that's right, comic books, was not cool, when science fiction and fantasy was being a geek. And you can see that in pretty much any 80s movie, like you could just go back to Revenge of the Nerds and stuff. Like, this just was not cool. It was frowned upon, and it was something you did like in the shadows and with your friends, and it was very niche. And now it is become incredibly mainstream. I still remember when I heard some women in their like 40s talking about Stranger Things, and they were talking about who's the bad guy in Stranger Things?
You were talking about Vecna, according to I know, not because it's the only bad guy in Stranger Things, but because according to the lexicon of Stephen Glicker's stories, Stephen Glicker was just walking around and suddenly heard women in their 40s talking about Vecna is that story.
And I was like, oh my God.
What a weird time we live in.
Like, right. I was like, wow. They probably had no idea, but it's one of those, okay, I get it, but do they know the history? And it doesn't matter. They don't need to know the history, but it's just
maybe they do.
Who knows? But the point is, it's fascinating to see that.
So let me tell you my, because I don't think it's about it being cool. I think what it is that we've, generally speaking, are just more accepting of, live and let live, let people enjoy things and let people do this. But my problem with this is, I experience this a lot because of the nature of who I am. This has happened to me twice, and it just stuck out to me because I want to support, gaming and geeking, but I also don't want to mansplain things and appear as this like, weird, I don't know, gatekeeper. But I remember I was at a local coffee shop, and there were two younger women, and they were playing Magic the Gathering, and they clearly had starter decks or whatever basic pre-con decks.
I can already smell where this is going.
And they were playing wrong.
You're playing it wrong.
But not just like wrong in like that's a minor technicality, you're not using the stack right. It was like, I think they were like throwing away their mana, like their lands, when they were using them, and they were like clearly struggling with the game, and I'm like, yeah, this would make the game not fun. Like, you're gonna bounce off of this probably because it's going to be a very unrewarding experience. But I didn't say anything, and a second time it happened, I think they just didn't understand how damage worked. But I didn't say anything because I don't want to be that person who comes in and goes, well, actually, and just be this weird old guy,
like that guy who was watching. Remember when we were at Origins,
and we told him, dude, get fucked. That's basically what you told him.
Oh, I was. You guys were so shocked
because we were being so polite, and you were basically just like, yeah, okay, dude, leave us alone.
Well, because we're trying to play a game, and then he's like analyzing it, and you guys are like, "Oh, really? Oh, really?" I look at him and I say, "Hey, dude, get away! Leave us alone." I was so rude to him because we're trying to play a game, man. Like, if you want to watch, that's fine, but it's not your job to give a blow-by-blow, play-by-play, uninvited.
Right. And so, in those cases, even though even though it's out there, I still feel like it puts me in a weird spot because because I don't want to appear to be some sort of authority on the subject matter, but I also feel a weird like protectiveness over the hobby, and I feel like I should be an ambassador for the game, and it's like well known at like my FLGS that like if I'm there and someone comes in and I happen to be there. If somebody's like, blah, 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 with board games, the store owner or whoever's, running the store will be like, oh, you should just go talk to Derek. And I'll be like, oh, okay, well, what kind of games do you like? Oh, do you like this? Do you like these kind of games? Are there any games here that you own and that you really particularly like? Because I can offer you some choices that are in that category. Or maybe you want something different. How many people do you play with? Like, and I'm like getting hyped up. Like, yes, you should enjoy board games. So when I see somebody like playing it wrong, I get upset. And that leads me to what I was going to talk about with D&D, which is I look at people playing D&D and I go, you're playing it wrong. You're not playing D&D. I don't know what you're playing, but you're not playing D&D. That's why I say D&D was never cool. What was cool, I think, was like people interacting socially. And I think people really enjoyed that. Mm-hmm. In an era of like TikTok and text messages and all this other stuff.
That could be. Well, my other thing is that...
And I think that's what people really gravitated to. I don't think they gravitated to Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, here's the other aspect of this I wanted to talk about, is that I went to... there's a game store here in Brooklyn that I went to, and I was talking to people, and they were all in their 20s. Boy, did I feel old. And they were playing D&D and playing stuff, and I was like, how long... I was talking to them, they were nice, some of them knew who I was, and I was like asking them how long they've been playing, and the answer for all of them was like 2 to 3 years, pretty much. And it's very common, obviously they're young, they can't be playing that long, but the point is that they have never seen D&D as anything other than kind of cool, especially between Stranger Things, Critical Role, Baldur's Gate now. Like, it's just like, it's been in the zeitgeist, it's kind of cool, it's kind of neat, but now it's going to start decreasing. It's going to become more niche, and are they going to stick with it and keep with it while it goes through this phase? Are they doing it because they like it? Are they doing it because everyone else was doing it and it was the cool thing to do? Or is it going to come like a comfortable hobby, kind of somewhere between where it was like in maybe the 90s or the early 2000s, where, it wasn't quite cool, but it wasn't quite not cool. I don't know what it was. It was sort of like in between. So it's sort of going to become like a comfort food in a way. So
it was still uncool in the 90s.
Okay. I was being generous.
Here's my thought as someone who is slightly younger than you, Steven. So I kind of grew up through where the pivot shift was. The pivot shift wasn't Critical Role. The pivot shift wasn't Stranger Things. It was the Lord of the Rings movies
the
and
other
stuff
Harry
going
Potter.
on around that time.
And Harry Potter.
What actually happened, having been the person, and it was nerdy, almost nobody was doing it. and then it got picked up, is that fantasy culture became mainstream. It's still nerdy, and I think it always was nerdy and not cool. But it became nerdy and mainstream and something that everyone would nod and like give a thumbs up and be like, awesome, in the same way that fantasy sports is. Fantasy sports is always nerdy. It has huge amounts of maths and calculation. But it was also something that when I was growing up, D&D, which has maybe even less statistics and probabilities needed for it, people would be like, what are you doing, D&D? Whereas if you were doing fantasy sports, they'd be like, oh yeah, fantasy sports, that has the word sports in it. And they'd be more okay with it. And I think that that's where it came to reach after all of those, like the Lord of the Rings era. There were other fantasy movies and other things coming around then. So that was the pivot point. And I think that since we're still post that era and fantasy is more mainstream, that no matter what Mike Mearls thinks in the interview, that D&D is never going to just like crash down now. It's still the nerdy but mainstream thing that it was. Maybe it's not going to be as popular as it was at the apex with the COVID, so people were finding something they could do to talk and interact with each other from afar, plus Critical Role and Stranger Things at their zenith. Maybe that's true, but it wasn't. I don't think it had to do with, he said the OGL made people back off and be like, whoa, it's not cool anymore. I think that was the most plugged in people, the third party companies, those who were part of the ecosystem, even some of the, YouTubers and other influencers and media people who stepped back and were like, whoa, we used to think WoTC and Hasbro were our friends and they were cool and nice to us. And maybe we still think that about the creators because this wasn't the creators' call, but now we realize they're a company and companies are sharks and they might bite us at any point in time. And people backed off and distanced, like the most invested, the companies that were in bed with them, the people whose livelihoods are depending on it. But the broader people who are just like 99% of people who are just like, oh yeah, it's D&D. Okay, yeah, I know what that is. Good for you. I think it still has not going to regress back to that's nerdy, let's stuff you in a locker days.
To be clear too, Mike, what Mike was trying to say too, isn't necessarily that people are going to move away from role-playing games. When I think, if you read what he says, he talks about, how well it was doing, and into 2019 he goes, but he's like, yeah, like, people aren't like, give me more D&D. They're saying I like role-playing games, and where's that going to go? You have a $5 million Kickstarter for Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere game. And he says he could have done a lot of things. 15 million, yeah. He could have done a role-playing game. You have Daggerheart, so breaking 5 million or whatever how many people it was. So it's one of those things where he talks about entering a post D&D world, and I don't think he necessarily means people are no longer going to play role-playing games. I think what he's saying...
Oh, no. If anything, they're going to play lots of role-playing games, just not D&D.
He's saying
Right.
the opposite. And one point that he made that is at least connected to something that's definitely correct is that in the past, when D&D does worse, the entire market does worse. And when D&D does better, the entire market does better. Now, he is now saying he thinks that because of unique circumstances that he's put in there, that this time D&D is going to do worse, but the market is going to stay the same-ish or do less worse, and instead those people are going to branch off into other RPGs. And I think that remains to be seen. I'm not convinced, like, whether or not D&D is doing worse. And Mearls had one piece of information that, if true, is actually a useful data point. I am not going to say that he's right or wrong on this, but he actually did get the data that when Steven and I were talking, Steven's like, well, we'll never have that. He said that he had data of, like, I think it was 2019 or something like that, D&D Beyond character creation, that he could compare like to like across the exact same time period for the new data that they came with the character creation. And he said that the new data is 70% of the peak data. which, if true, is not a catastrophic drop. It's more like the drops that Steven showed with video games in that other episode that we had, where they were like, we're not going up, we're going down a little bit. But is at least, if he's correct, that does show that it's down from the peak.
Yeah.
Super chat from Mark T. OGL meant nothing to 90% of fans. Maybe
Yes.
even more than 90%.
OGL meant nothing to 99% of fans, but it meant a massive amount to Hasbro and how D&D has been treated since. And it actually was very important. It's a pivot point. And in fact, Ben Riggs, that's what he's doing. He's researching his next book, because I spoke to him too. He's going to talk about the OGL, basically. So, yeah, I think we're going to be in that a bit, because I have all the information.
One thing I thought that was very soothing to me. I did love that Mearls kept referring to it as 5.5.
Yes.
And clearly internally, they were calling it 5.5 or 5. Yeah, 100%. Like, of course they were. Of course, of course they were. Yes, exactly.
Or at least some of them were, right?
Yeah,
but it seems like at least some of the people who work on the game looked like they were actively mad when people were calling it 5.5.
Yeah, because that was the company byline. Don't call it 5.5.
No, but some of them looked like they were like literally irritated. So maybe it was that some people in the company did not like the name, and everyone else was calling it that. That would be actually even in the company. That would be a good reason for the people who were annoyed to be annoyed if they couldn't even stop, their own coworkers from calling. They're like, no, it's not. It's not. Well, no one listened to me.
Some people want to know again who Mike Mearls is.
Okay, so he's one of the creators of D&D 5e. He started out, I'm pretty sure he was writing a ton of third-party products during the original OGL in 3e. Just so many that he won some kind of like random award for most likely to be a caffeine-powered robot or something like that was like made up. At which point, like, Monty Cook brought him on to write some stuff like the Iron Heroes game that was way back when Monty Cook was doing like Arcana Unearthed and some of those other things back in 3E era. He was then hired on at Wizards and worked on 4E, and then was a lead on 5E, and then like moved around to Magic and other stuff before eventually he was laid off in 2023, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he also said, which, again, interesting, because he said, and I believe him because I know the history, is that he was not fired from D&D and he moved over to the WoTC, moved over to Magic the Gathering, because pretty much everyone from the D&D group was moved over to the Magic the Gathering, by the way. Like that, the entire team was moved over.
The way he described it was that the direction he wanted to, he's like, we already had D&D Beyond, which was very player focused. Here's your thing to build your characters and all this other stuff. Player. And he said, I want to work on tools. I want to work on digital tools, on print tools that will help dungeon masters.
Right.
And
which they would never do, by the way.
Right. The powers that be said, that's not what we're going to continue focusing on, right? Classes sell, feats sell, ancestry sell, species, whatever they call them now. So we're going to keep producing that. And Mearls, according to Mearls, said, yeah, I don't really want to work on that. And so that's why he kind of was, voluntold, I guess, to go to Magic, and wasn't working on D&D. And he basically said that like 75% of like what people just randomly came up with about him was like completely wrong. And he didn't want to get into the details of it. But yeah, Jason, I believe he is with Chaosium now. So
he is.
I'm certain he's with Chaosium.
Well, he is. And more importantly, he's been doing the rounds. So he did an interview, I can post it, where he met with Ben Riggs, who is writing a book about pretty much the history of, I guess, OGL and what's been happening recently with D&D. And he wrote a book a couple years ago. And he also was on Professor Dungeon Master's show, and he did an interview there. If you're a Patreon, you can watch that. That show is genius because he did what I've been doing. So funny because he being Professor Dungeon Master, asked Mike Mearls all the questions that people have been asking, like, was 4th edition based on World of Warcraft? Did this, and Mike Mearls' answer to every single thing was yes. And Professor Dungeon Master, this is going to go live in probably a little while, it's like, thank God somebody can finally, he's like, I feel vindicated. And I also have been saying that.
Mearls has been on the record in the past that there were some ideas that were from like World of Warcraft and video games that were in there.
He goes into detail,
like
explaining
the A button and the B button and some of the things on your controller and how they could do like a big attack versus a small attack going into the
no
dailies
one believes
and
us.
at-wills.
People are like, no, that's not true. But
he's
he goes
been on the record saying that.
I know, but people don't remember.
Well, I guess he's now on the record.
But
it's interesting.
He goes through it, explains it. It goes people. Yes and no.
I mean, Professor Dungeon Master's video is going to get, whatever, 50, 60, 70,000.
I guess it's only Patreon views. So.
Well, no. He's what he does. He puts it on Patreon and then he puts it out. Yeah, it'll go.
Patrons get his stuff earlier.
Yeah.
Whereas, I mean, I'm not saying that it won't blow up a little bit, but like Ben Riggs, who is, one of the foremost, I guess I would say authors or biographers, right?
Yes.
Horse historians
yes.
in the space. Whereas if you go to his video with Mike Mearls, it has, a few thousand views. In fact, Ben Riggs only has 400 subs. So, there's a scale difference there for sure.
Yeah, no, certainly.
Yeah. So,
and in fact,
so we had a super chat from Agile Monk for Steven. It says, Steven, my friend, this is for you. As you look like you're having a really hard day or something, thinking about you and hope that all is okay with you.
Thank you. No, I had my COVID shot. So I guess I do look like crap.
Yeah, he's able to tell.
I'm like, wow, I guess it really does make you feel like crap. Well, it definitely did, because like I was freezing cold last night and like I couldn't sleep and I was just so cold. You know how it is when you get sick, and it's like I guess the COVID shot really I was tired all day. So
man, I love the modern YouTube internet. All right. So Ben Riggs has his, he's a historian, he's an academic. And he's got videos on here, like he talked about Al Qadim with Sue Wineline, who used to be married to Monty Cook. Aaron Evans, Richard Dansky. He was talking about he had an interview with Skip Williams. 120 views.
Yeah, I know.
95.
I'm one of those people.
Wait. 95 views on the Al Qadim. So, all right, 2 days ago, why Mike Mearls left D&D already at 5K views. It's just,
when Professor Dungeon Master, he's going to get 50, 60, 70,000 off of his.
Professor Dungeon Master is so right when he just talks about how these fucking people complain about the clickbait, but that's the only thing that they click on.
Derek, if he had named it like Mike Mearls analyzes the wish spell, which was his initial topic, he'd bring it back down to lower amounts.
Wait, we got something. Wait, breaking news. Everyone's been waiting for this day to come.
Oh yeah, the day of
reckoning has come. We have Derek and Jess on the show at the same time. Oh, whoa. Look! Yay!
Look, we're even sharing a window.
I know. No, dude. Well, now look at that. You could, and she was looking right at you. Oh,
hello.
I think I can just sit back and relax. I don't need to do anything anymore.
Hello, Ms. Redicop. Red cap.
Hello, Mr. Melinda.
Red cap. That's it. It's red cap.
Well, I mean, so you were talking earlier about like 99% of people don't know about the OGL. I think that's true, but I do just want to add that my hairdresser knew.
What?
Yeah.
That's really, really friggin' impressive.
Okay, but what is the correlation between people who hairdress neon green swoops and people who play TTRPGs? Because
I think it's probably a lot higher. I think that's the real Critical Role boom, honestly, is that all the hairdressers got into D&D. No, like to be fair, like my hairdresser isn't just like I went to the mall and met a hairdresser. Like this is somebody who my roommate's girlfriend LARPed with, right? But still, I went to get my hair done, and my hairdresser is like, "Ooh, so about that OGL."
So, by the way,
to be fair, it did momentarily get into some like
And we got into
bigger news sources.
Yeah.
And
it
so
was,
we did
it was
hear
major news.
Yeah.
like D&D agnostic people, at least I heard D&D agnostic people mentioning it. It's like, I saw this in whatever news source.
Yeah.
And so there was at least a moment where people saw it. But the question is like, now we're in 2025. How many of those remember it or think about it if they ever think about D&D again?
Yeah, so my hairdresser doesn't remember it explicitly. However, it still has a lasting effect on her and her playgroup, because when it happened, they did start branching out into non-D&D games, and I honestly don't know if they still play D&D. They do a lot of PBTA now.
Oh wow!
Interesting.
There you go. So we have at least anecdotal evidence.
So, right,
a smaller percent.
I'll take that as a win.
Yeah, I have
like
evidence for that too. But
but like the sample size of one here that I have is also somebody who already was like a LARPer. So
there you go.
that's fair. So once you're willing to LARP or even just do anything that is not just D&D in role playing games, that immediately makes you like a segment of the TTRPG / LARPing market that is already, I would consider you to be a TTRPGer, and you have very different buying and playing habits than what I would call a D&Der, who is just someone who they've only ever done D&D, they've never done anything else, and they haven't yet really considered doing the other thing.
So wait, a few quick things. First of all, we had 1 million hearts going crazy on the chat when Jess came. So we have Jess and Derek, everyone's two favorite guests. Second of all, how is it we only have 37 likes and 225 people watching? Come on, people. Do you not have thumbs? Come on.
Do you not have thumbs?
I know, seriously. What is going on? This is the show extraordinaire.
Even I think this is not that bad considering the number of views that poor Ben got in the literal interview with Mike Mearls that this is.
But it's bad for us. It's not great for us. But so
remember the glory days of the OGL when you had like 6,000 people.
8,000 people.
We had over 9,000 that one time.
9,000.
9,000.
It was over 9,000.
It was beautiful, and it was like the chat was going by so fast that you couldn't read it. It was beautiful.
Yeah. So I mean, so clearly there was this surge of interest because those people were not there before. And if you look at a lot of channels, even, not D&D channels, right? The PF2 ecosystem of, back then of like NoNat and the Rules Lawyer and stuff, they grew, 10x in a month by just throwing a couple clickbait titles out there. So there was clearly a population of people who were tuning into this. Now,
So another aspect of this, which dovetails into this, which has kind of been going under the radar, but it's actually pretty big news. So Critical Role is wrapping up their season 3 with a 8-hour stream. It's very long, and it's just one massive stream that's going to wrap up. They also announced that season 3 is, quote, the end of
Alexandria.
Right, of all those characters, of Alexandria, of everything, and they're gonna, quote, do something new. And you wonder, I mean, we've been saying it all along. It's like, are they gonna do Daggerheart? Are they gonna do in D&D? They're doing Daggerheart, okay? There's no way they're not.
When we predicted, and Steven and I picked percentages when we were forced to pick percentages over under for whether it be Daggerheart, that a lot of people in the comments said it was too high. But I think if you asked again now, people may, now that we know that Alexandria is done, that people may have moved more towards that.
I was on the they're not gonna leave D&D. I was on the they're not going to Daggerheart train, but now I'm leaning more towards this. Although I would actually be more likely to now say they are going to leave D&D, but I also think the cast might tap out. I mean, I'm not saying all of them will tap out, but I think for a lot of them, this is like the end of a road of, they've done it for however many, years now, 5-6 years. And I don't think they want to keep doing it.
Yeah, I think for a long time, they probably felt like they needed to have the entire cast together to keep doing it. But Dropout has shown that that's actually not the case, and that you can have a lot of success with like a core cast, like the Dropout, Dimension 20 Intrepid Heroes, but not have every campaign with those people and bring in more people so that your core cast can pursue other projects, take breaks, leave and come back.
Yeah. So that was another aspect, because if they leave D&D, and I'm not saying they are, but let's just say they do.
We don't know for sure.
We don't know for sure, but let's just say they do.
Let's assume.
Let's just assume. There's other aspects, such as like they have been slowly replacing parts of their system that were like like they had the gods of D&D and they've been slowly replaced. Like they need to do a clean break. So if they do D&D, whatever they do is going to be 100% clean break, and they're going to have zero IP that they have to worry about.
That's the counterfactual. That's the devil's advocate to maybe they're staying D&D, but Exandria is too muddied. There's even guides that they publish alongside with WoTC.
They can't. So it has to be a clean break.
They might stay, but create brand new IP. They might shift to Daggerheart.
So, but if you...
Exandria was kind of already a mess, though, because it still had a whole bunch of remnants of starting a Pathfinder, too.
Yeah,
like,
they
have an entire cartoon where their cleric is a worshiper of Saren Ray.
So you have that, and a lot of people are Critical Role fans. So if they, quote, leave D&D, and D&D, which it's a whole other subject of how well it's selling, and a bunch of Dungeons and Discourse did a big video this week where she even mentioned us and said, hey, what do you know? Steven was right that those book scan numbers maybe are pretty bad. And by the way, they're still really bad. They haven't increased. If anything, they're going down. And that includes Amazon sales. So whatever.
Well, yeah, but they switched to Daggerheart.
Oh, she's here, by the way. She just said hi. Oh my God, we can get you on the show too. Oh, the world would explode.
You don't have room on your. You don't even room on your overlay.
Oh, I have I have a number 5.
Maybe you can just excuse yourself.
Oh, okay. I don't mind.
I mean, he did have a COVID shot, so like,
I'm tired. I'll just sit here. If you want to get on, I'm going to send her the link. I'm going to send her the link right now.
Producer Glicker. But no, look, I'd love to have faith in my fellow TTRPG community, but I don't. And here's what's going to happen. Critical Role is going to maybe break up. The band will break up, and maybe Mercer and maybe a couple other people stay on.
I think they're going to just do lots of little shows rather than one huge show.
And then they do Daggerheart.
Yes.
And a bunch of people are like, yeah, man, Daggerheart. They're going to go out and buy Daggerheart. And then like 3 weeks later, they're going to be like, yeah. And then 3 weeks later, they're going to be like, well, we're never playing that again. And they're going to go back to D&D. Yeah, they're going to go back to D&D. Daggerheart again, role-playing, I said this on my stream the other day. I was like, by and large, role-playing, the RPG role-playing game community doesn't want to play role-playing games. Like, they don't. It seems
You're
counterintuitive.
100% right.
You know, they don't.
I love baseball. I don't want to play baseball.
Right.
I think that there's a lot of people who probably comprise a lot of the Critical Role audience for whom the specific game that they are playing does not actually have that significant a bearing on their experience.
That's fair, but I feel like games like Daggerheart are more in your face about it, whereas like D&D is seen as almost this like backseat element that like is easily ignored or passed off. Daggerheart is a game I think that demands, its mechanics to me feel a bit more in your face. It feels a bit more demanding.
Yeah. That's fair. I haven't taken that close a look at Daggerheart, so I don't know.
The fact that it's got like cards that you have to like link, your powers already, I think is going to just turn off just so many people.
You never know.
Yeah, I can see that.
Never know.
So we had a super chat from Myrtos who said that Myrtos thinks a lot of the Critical Role fans want them to play another game, not just because of dislike of WoTC Hasbro, but because it feels like they're done with D&D. That's different than what we heard last time the topic came up from some other Critical Role fans who were in chat who said they thought a lot of their fans want them to play D&D. And Mark T sent a super chat that said most everyone went to D&D Beyond or bought direct, talking about why is it not in the book scan. And I think that is accurate.
I do too.
And I think that's what WoTC wanted.
Yeah.
Because they get a bigger cut that way.
Yeah.
Also, think about how much, I don't know what the exact initial book scans are, but think about how much different the TTRPG playing environment was from 2014 to say 2020 versus 2020 to now. Like everyone's playing virtually. Even people who play in person play virtually. Like D&D Beyond is now the cornerstone of your ecosystem. Maybe 4 or 5 years ago you would have bought it in person because you still want. But the idea now that you would ever play on anything other than a digital platform is so anathema to you that you having it in print is pointless. So I think that a lot of people are buying it digitally.
Yeah, no, they are. Don't get me wrong. The digital sales are big, and it's a big part of it because they're going all digital. But, and we talked about this before the stream started. It doesn't matter. Like they're not making magic numbers. In fact, they're not even making 10% of what Magic makes. D&D just isn't that big, and it just never will be. What?
I said fuck Magic. Ugh. It's just so bad now.
I know, but it makes $1 billion a year.
I know. But this year we're getting Spider-Man, we're getting Final Fantasy, we're getting another, and it's like it's all going to be legal. It's like the game has no identity anymore. It's just a bunch of memes and jokes, and I hate that it sells.
Because that's what the people want. I guess know what? Magic the Gathering has turned into clickbait.
I don't know what it's turned into.
Kind of.
Garbage.
Okay, garbage. Garbage bait.
I see what Steven's saying about clickbait. The idea is it is a set that has such a weird premise that you have to look at it and then you might buy it. Like when you hear they made SpongeBob SquarePants. Is so weird that I still remember that, even though I no longer play Magic. I remember that from one of our previous episodes. How long ago was that? Yeah. And so it gets in your head. You think about it, you look at it, and you consider it. And so it kind of is a clickbait set.
By the way,
I can't believe they haven't done more brand integrations with the brands that they own. Like, where's the Monopoly Magic the Gathering?
Well, that's really because they don't make any money off that. That's why. So
but Wizards of the Coast owns, man. I agree with Jess. Like, why? Like they did a Transformers, and that was not as successful. I mean, Lord of the Rings was like. Lord of the Rings set was apparently one of their best-selling sets of all time.
I think it was the best-selling set of all time.
Guys,
it was the number
probably.
one.
I'm not imagining this, right? I thought that they did it.
Well, strangely enough,
that sounds like something that exists.
Jonas, there is a G.I. Joe RPG and there is a Transformer RPG, but none of them were produced by Wizards of the Coast. They were produced by Renegade Studios.
Yeah, they're all done by Renegade.
Wizards of the Coast outsourced their own IPs to a different game company.
Because it's cheaper. Because it's cheaper. It's easier too. Yeah.
I mean, imagine if Steven was like creating something like he's like, oh, we're gonna do it, and he's like, sorry, Mark, you're not working on this. I'm shipping this to somebody else entirely. You're going to be completely off of this project. You're not working on this at all.
Well, Jess writes for us, so I already do.
Well, yes, but I'm saying, imagine.
I know. I'm kidding. So I do want to mention something that Mike Mearls said, which actually opened up my eyes and sort of made everything start working. Whoops, that's my daughter calling me. Is that he mentioned that one of the reasons the OGL probably happened was the success of a video game property that was using the 5th edition rules called Celestra. Or Solastra. And it did okay. It was not like amazing, but it's fine. But I guarantee and this was right at the peak where they were trying to make deals, and they probably freaked out when they saw, wait a second. And back then, by the way, they were deep in the middle of working on Baldur's Gate 3. They're like, wait, so this company came around and made a game based on 5e and is selling it and doing well, and we don't get a single penny. And the answer is no, because of the OGL. And people forget. I don't care what they say. It's like, I don't want to get into any of that. But the point of the OGL, why everyone was freaking out, is because Hasbro tried to cancel it. That was the whole thing. Like, they went back and said, the OGL doesn't exist anymore. We're canceling it. You now
have to. They tried to revoke the original.
Right.
They tried to revoke the original, which they literally had said was perpetual before.
Right.
And then they also put an ultimatum up. And that's one thing where what Mike Mearls said in his larger point in that interview was he was like, well, it was really just asking people for feedback, and then they leaked it. And I think that it's very interesting to me because like later on, okay, not from like the same source who leaked the OGL, because obviously we had a leaked OGL. I just heard from like a variety of like the kind of people who were like in the talks with them, like after it was all public, that it was true that like the people they were directly talking to at Wizards, that like not the lawyers, were sometimes seemed like they were like friendly-ish people who also seemed confused about what was happening. So maybe that's indicative of Mearls also thinking it was supposed to be a negotiation and not understanding what the lawyers were pulling.
It was not.
But it was not a negotiation.
No.
It was.
It was
if it was a
strong
negotiation, it was Darth Vader negotiating in Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
When he said, "We have altered the terms of the agreement. Pray I do not alter them further."
Yeah, it was extremely strong-armed. I mean, we went through it in detail, and I need to rehash it here, but we have all the notes. You can watch our past videos. They did everything in their power. They did it during Christmas. It's like, this is like classic 101. This is like standard tactics that you do when you're strong arming people. Like, they did everything by the book when you're trying to like force people to accept a terrible deal. So anyhow,
I do want to say one thing though. Like Mearls, and he did say something, and I'm not defending Wizards of the Coast here, but like the thing is like, and Mearls explained this, you know, I mean, we all kind of assumed this was the case, but like, he's like, they realized that the way they were going to make money off of this was with licensing.
Right.
And they realized the brand of D&D was worth way more than the game of D&D. But the problem is, how do you license something to people when you have a license that says anybody can use this for anything at any time? And so, you know, the powers that be realized that they were never going to be able to license this to somebody if you had this open license, because no one has to pay for it. You could just get it.
By the way,
my God.
Yes, we actually have.
Oh my God.
Dungeons and Discourse. Hold on, I gotta redo
Is this even going to work with 5 people?
Steven's already got a brand new overlay set up.
I got a new overlay set up. Hold on, I'm trying to get it to work.
Now I'm sharing with Derek.
Yes. Well, hold on. Here we go. Whoop, there. Although you're not on.
It is a crime.
Hello. Where's your video?
Hello.
We don't see you though.
Hello?
We only hear you.
Oh.
It is a crime that Zoom doesn't have better OBS integration, and that you can't use individuals as like you.
Yeah,
you
how
just
do
get
they?
the full
I see
thing.
people who have it where things move automatically based on, I don't know what program they're using. Have you seen that where like the people move automatically and they can show up? And I have no idea how they're doing that. I wish I knew, because I would do that.
Yeah, there's something that you can do. There's like a plugin that I think can create a separate video feed source for each of your Zoom things, but you need some sort of specialized software, and it's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. Hold on, I'm getting you in the shot. Oh, Mark is all messed up. Sorry about that. Mark.
Yeah, I'm with Derek now. Or the top of Derek's head.
All right, I'm fixing that. I'm fixing it. Hello,
So-
Dungeons and Discourse. We haven't seen you in a long time. I haven't
Hello.
spoken to you in so long. You've been on the show a few times. This is just worlds colliding. Hold on, I gotta just get you.
It's not a coincidence. I check out your show every single week.
Oh,
I'm like always
thank you.
there in the background watching.
Oh,
Smoking
thank you.
cigarettes, you know,
Yeah.
stealing ideas for future videos.
Oh, well, I'm honored. And I saw when you were hanging out with Professor Dungeon Master. That was one of his highlights of the trip when he went overseas.
Awesome! That's great. That's great.
Sorry,
we had a
hold on,
good
I'll get you
time. We had a
on.
really good time. I showed him the sights of Belfast, which is to say, we sat in a pub for a few hours.
Yeah, that's
So-
what he told me. He loved it. He had a great time.
Yeah.
So hold on, I'm getting you
He
on.
arrived on the national holiday where there's riots and violence on the streets, so it was a pretty good time, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he timed it perfectly, absolutely perfectly, to get the
we
true
go.
Belfast experience. Hell yeah!
There we go. So
Wow. Now you got that. Oh, yep. I think
there
you
we
got
go.
it. No,
Finally,
no.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Yeah.
It's like the Hollywood Squares. Only.
Oh yeah, we just need a couple more people. We can Brady Bunch this thing up.
Although we just got a super chat for 22 Turkish lira from Khadgar, it does not look like it is associated with a statement.
Okay. Well, that's nice.
Well,
That's the best kind of donation. That's the best one. Like, what do they want? It's so enigmatic. It's perfect.
Oh no, it says it said it down below. Rare tabletop YouTubers on same point. Mark your calendars.
Oh,
rare.
Actually, he said calcaders. So.
Cal-
Oh, you're right,
Just-
calculators.
Yeah.
Rare as in underviewed and underappreciated, in which case, yes. I agree.
So, Dungeons and Discourse, what's your take on this whole thing of because you've heard our takes and you've been listening. What's your take?
On what?
Oh, on if D&D is no longer if D&D
this
is
is a
no longer
multifaceted convo.
Yeah, well, that's true. What's your take on everything? Just tell us your whole.
What's your take on my hairdresser?
Yeah, oh yeah, the hairdresser.
That sounds incredible. I need a hairdresser.
Yeah.
Yeah, will D&D is D&D. Well, you're big in Warhammer. And Warhammer is fascinating because that has come and gone, and like D&D is really only went from geeky to popular, is now going back down. But the Warhammer has been going up, and that's a roller coaster. That's going up and down, and now with the Amazon show, it's going to start going up again probably.
No, I think.
Oh yeah.
40K has been on the rise for decades. I mean, that's at the expense of fantasy, unfortunately.
I think you have like different time periods, different groups of people got into it. Like in 2004 is when I got into it off the back of Dawn of War, the video game. If anyone remembers that game, that rocked. Yeah, the height of RTS games. But I got in on that. I remember there's a lot of people who got in on that. But then it sort of became a little bit more obscure again. And you see it in like memes and stuff. But in like the last 10 years, Warhammer has been absolutely exploding in popularity. Like it's insane. It's wild. I think they're building their 4th factory at the minute. So demand has absolutely skyrocketed for it. But Warhammer is the D&D of wargaming, right? It is the gateway into that wider hobby. And unlike D&D, nobody leaves Warhammer. Like you get into Warhammer, and because it's so expensive, it's almost impossible to diversify your hobby. Because you buy like one Space Marine, dude, your budget is gone for the year. That's it. You're done. You've got your Space Marine. You got to wait another year, work in the mines, at least with D&D, like you can buy the one book and just be kind of done, and like maybe borrow a book or two from a friend and play the game that way. And it means that people can play other games, and people forget about that with Warhammer. So I think Warhammer's exploding in popularity, and I think you're right. With Amazon, it's going to get even big. It's going to get massive.
It's going to get absolutely gigantic because Amazon is going to.
Oh yeah.
It's not even funny.
The real question is, as good as Dawn of War and Winter Assault and Dark Crusade were, how bad was Dawn of War 2? And the answer is a lot.
Dawn of War 2 was fantastic. What are you talking about?
Okay.
Dawn of War 2 was terrible.
Oh, you're dredging up some wars from the olden days here. Okay. So I hated Dawn of War 2.
I'm talking about, I'm thinking
different.
Space Marine 2. Sorry, Space Marine 2.
No. We're talking about actual games, RTSs.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
sorry.
RTS
I was yeah. Sorry. I was saying
there's people in the chat right now, no doubt, who like weren't born when this battlefield was drawn, No, Dawn of War 2 really grew on me, and I grew to love Dawn of War 2. And maybe it's just because Dawn of War 3 came out afterwards, and in hindsight, I was like, Dawn of War 2 was a great game. That was a fantastic game.
Yeah. But anyways, it was that era when, similar, right, to 4th edition D&D, right? WoW was all the rage, and the MMOs were all the rage. At the time of Dawn of War 2, right, it was all about like MOBAs. It was all about like the dawn of like Defense of the Ancients in Warcraft 3 and stuff like that. So they were like, no, nobody plays RTSs anymore. Everybody wants a hero battler. And so that's kind of what they got. It was terrible. Anyways,
it was the kind of the casualization of the RTS genre, right? You take it down from trying to micro and macro and controlling these big armies, and then instead it's just one person. You're just controlling one character. It just made that little bit easier. And then they realized, why are we even doing top-down games anyway? Let's just do like fucking island battlers. That's correct. The end.
Well, my favorite still is Space Hulk. Space Hulk is
the board game.
So good. It's so good. Really
You're a Terminator squad that goes to a floating Imperial relic vehicle, and then you have to wipe out Tyranids like, Harmagons and Termagants.
It's so good.
Have you ever played Aliens Another Glorious Day in the Core? Or as I like to call it, Aliens Ag Dick. Have you ever played it?
A video game? No.
It's a board game, but it's basically Space Hulk, but better. Like,
oh wow,
way better. Like with great mechanics. You're playing as Marines
Derek,
going up against aliens. Yeah, it's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic mechanic where you bring equipment, but your equipment forms this deck, and when you shoot your gun, you draw cards from your deck and discard them. So if you've got too much equipment, you don't have enough ammo. So you've got to like balance how much equipment you bring versus how much cards you want to keep in your deck. It's very clever mechanically.
This is really important because you see what's happening right now? All those people who said that D&D was cool would hate everything that's going on right now because this is true nerd culture, right?
So by the way, talking about how you can turn those kind of experiences into a card game is really cool because then I can say that reminds me of the Pathfinder adventure card game where if you want to hold in-hand equipment into your hand, that clogs it up and you can't be drawing all the consumables and other things. But if you're constantly using up consumable ammunition and healing potions and stuff, you'll run out of cards, which kills you because it's also your health in that game.
This is why if you're a game designer, never be afraid of just stealing ideas from other games because everybody's doing it. You think something's original, then you hear it's been done like 10 years ago. Fantastic.
Well, often it can be just evolutionary design where it's not the same, like in some animals that evolve to be almost the same from completely different branches in the tree. And that's why I'm willing to always believe that it was a coincidence when people are like, there can be no coincidence that Heizo put out a circus adventure and then WoTC put out a circus adventure several months later. I'm like, no, that is the coincidence. In fact, they were so close they couldn't have been stolen from each other because they would have had to be so close to done before either one of them was announced.
All right, so
we had a super chat from China that said, "Congrats, Glicker, for fixing the video." And another one from Agile Monk that says Dungeon Discourse where sarcasm as a service is the SAAS. We are looking for love you crazy Irish gal, it says.
Thanks. That's super kind.
I have to say, okay, a few things. Okay, let me just go through some housekeeping and then just feel free to jump in, by the way, as I misspelled your name because it's Jessiva Radical.
Oh, Jessiva.
Sorry, but I think that's kind of cool. It's kind of
Jessiva
edgy.
Redcap.
Yeah, Redcap. I kind of like that. First of all, we have a few things. First of all, why do we have almost 300 concurrent viewers and 94 likes? Come on, people! Next thing I'm going to have to do is get Professor in here, which he won't do.
That's a good ratio.
I know, but he won't do it. He's working. Let's see. Jana said Sega Genesis Shining Force 1 and 2 best game. I don't know why you said that, but I agree with you. Shining Force 1 and 2 are fantastic. I do love those games.
We're talking about RTSs.
I know, but that's a video game. And it's
RTSs.
Yeah, well, it is an RTS. Well, kind of. It's not really an RTS. It's more of a what would you call it? It's more like Warsong or something. Anyhow, we did want to know. One question was, what's your favorite?
It's turn-based tactical RPG rather than RTS.
Yeah, well, it's actually hero-based, but they want to know what your favorite faction is. I guess for everyone. What's your chaos god too? I guess Dungeons and Discourse. And oh boy.
For me, it has to be Slaanesh, number one, because I'm a filthy degenerate, and also secondly, because fighting in a war sounds really hard. But if you worship Slaanesh, you get to just exist in the pleasure houses at the top of society. So plus you get to do lots of networking as well as part of the Slaanesh thing. So that's Slaanesh. And then favorite faction. Oh, that's hard. I've gone back and forth in that. I collect like 7 different like Warhammer 40k armies. Tell you what, at the minute. I'm going to say Sisters of Battle. I think they just encapsulate the 40k setting so perfectly. They've got tanks that are cathedrals. I mean, what more could you ask for, Are
they the ones with the penitent engines?
Yeah, they are. They're the ones that, like, they have walkers and they strap a guy to the front of them because they don't want armor. The whole point is that it's a punishment. You're not meant to be safe from all the bullets.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I find the concept of Cinch to be the most fun, but in the board game Chaos in the Old World, Slaanesh was the most fun to play as when you're playing as the evil gods and trying to kill everybody. Cinch was too random in that one, and it caused the Cinch player to always come in last when we used to play it back in the day.
Well, I don't really play, but I do have a Space Marine on my desk right here that I painted.
Yeah.
Oh,
Just,
look at that.
hanging around. Whoop,
As a game designer, I'm too poor to play war games.
TTS.
And I was
Play them on
yeah.
TTS.
When I was in high school, though, I really wanted to play Warhammer Fantasy, which was a problem because my friends all played Warhammer 40k. But I did make an attempt at buying a Britannia army that did not particularly go anywhere. I have Morgan Le Fay around somewhere, but
Excellent. Yes, the damsel of the lake. Yeah.
Look, Warhammer's really expensive, but wargaming generally isn't like if you check out okay, get a pen. I'm gonna say some names here. So there's Mantic Games, Warlord Games, there are War Games Atlantic. There's so many companies out there that are doing miniatures that you can use in games of Warhammer, and also they have their own game systems as well, like super affordable. Kings of War, yeah, I see a Kings of War there. yeah. But like it's crazy because you'll get like you'll spend like £47 and get like 40 models from one company, or like like you'll spend like $50 and you'll get like 50 models, and then from Games Workshop you'll get like 10. It's wild what they can do as the market leader, who essentially have a monopoly on the entire hobby.
Also 3D printing.
Yeah. Like my cousin's 7-year-old daughter plays Warhammer, and she seems to be doing I guess she's a cousin too. Everything's a cousin past a certain point. That they seem to be doing 3D printing. I'm not sure exactly how that works. Is it legal to 3D print things?
Oh yeah.
Some games. Yeah.
I mean, well, not only that, they're very affordable Patreons where you can get STL files, and it's very like above board. And
no, I don't mean legal in terms of like legality in like will the government
like the Pinkertons will come for you.
Tournament legal to play
not Games Workshop.
Not
Games Workshop. Not Games Workshop. Not Games Workshop. In an official GW store or like a Rogue Trader tournament, you cannot play anything 3D printed.
Fair enough.
Although I will say, what they don't know won't hurt them. So
all your minis are modded. You're like, it's all modded. Yeah,
kit bash.
I think there was a time where even if you kit bashed, you had to kit bash with official GW sprues and stuff. It was crazy.
Actually, just this week, they got in a bit of controversy because they banned kit bashing between their sci-fi properties and their fantasy games. So you couldn't use like fantasy kits to kit bash with the sci-fi ones. They reversed that. That was like a week, and everyone was like, what are you on? Like, this makes no sense. Like, this is madness. And they did reverse it. But if they could have gotten away with it, that's what they would.
We only talk about
how strict they would be.
All the craziness that goes on in WoTC and D&D. Can you imagine if we were Dungeons and Discourse every week? Because I know you alternate, like 1 week it's Warhammer, 1 week it's D&D. It's like, that is madness. My brain would explode because that sounds like too much insanity going on between those two companies. But you never run out of things to talk about, I'll tell you that much.
Games Workshop seems like they are bonkers strict, and I mean they're very successful and they're not losing that much money, so it's great, I guess. But whatever, I don't remember the specific announcement that they made that pissed off if the Emperor had a TTS machine people, but that's like pissing off Critical Role in terms of like normie onboarding.
So what happened to Titan Forge? I heard it closed or something. What was going on? Or was it Forge World or something? I don't know. I heard something.
Yeah, they kind of like folded Forge World into the main studio, but then separated it out again under a different name and give them kind of control over like 3 of the more indie games, like Necromunda, The Old World, and Horse Heresy. It's just a bunch of internal structuring. Games Workshop, I think a way to think about Games Workshop is that they're this tiny company that has accidentally made loads of money and become super successful, but they still act like a tiny little company, and they don't think like I'll give this much to Hasbro. I mean, when they go for like schemes, they are audacious with it, right? Like they send Pinkertons to your eyes. They'll like try to shut down. But like Games Workshop are just like, oh, you got to play with only our models, and everyone's like, what? Like, well, you can't kit bash between fantasy and what does that mean? Like, yeah, it's a very British company.
I was about to say, that's the difference between, it's like the British company, it's like, we're evil, you can't kit bash. And supposed to the American company, it's like, we're evil, we're literally sending Pinkertons after you.
I don't remember which edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battles it was. It might have been 7th, it might have been 8th, but like literally, the official rule was, if you can't decide what the rule is, make a strong cup of tea and roll a d6. And whoever rolls higher, their interpretation of the rule is the correct one, and move on with your life. That was literally the rule in the
Hold
game.
on. Games Workshop sued a company out of existence because of the use of Space Marine. Okay, they at least have...
I believe you mean the Adeptus Astartes.
And don't forget, Orc. You can't use if you use Orc with a K, you're gonna know out of
They
business.
lost on Space Marine, but it cost so much money and just delaying and waiting to see what would happen that it was too late for the other company.
They're still a company. They're just lowercase evil as opposed to capital E evil.
I don't know. They're pretty nasty. Well, like whenever it comes to the wargame hobby, like they'll go after like 3D print sellers and stuff. Like they really do like the police their kind of area. I think a part of the problem is that at least with Dungeons and Dragons, people are aware of other games. Like, there's like a large kind of Pathfinder community. There's a large Cthulhu community. And you get obviously all sorts of other games. People are open to an extent playing other games, but with games, people don't know that there's a war game hobby. There's people who have been like playing Warhammer for like 15 years, and if you say, have you ever heard of like Kings of War, they'll go, what's Kings of War? It's a miniature war game. What's that? Like they only know about Warhammer. It's wild. It's like absolutely crazy.
I think that is pretty analogous though to the D&D,
100%.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of D&D people who
100%.
Well, maybe
it's analogous.
Not.
But the level, I think it's very extreme wargaming. Partly because of like money issues and like you have to buy models and spend lots of time painting them and stuff.
But
I think Discourse is right somewhat because of if you ask the typical D&D person who's very tuned into D&D and doesn't do anything else, what's Pathfinder? They'll say it's that other game that's like maybe the next most one that has those people who are constantly telling me that I should try it instead of playing D&D.
Yes.
Because it's got like the sort of Final Fantasy 14 style community who are like, come on guys, we're the number 2, try it out, that are evangelical enough that people have heard of it for that reason at some point.
Yeah. They're like, what's Pathfinder 2? Oh, it's that game with the illusion of choice.
By the way, I fixed your name, Jessica. I got you.
And we had another super chat from David Perry who said 3035 is the variety Dragon Star Dragon mech.
Yeah, I never got into Dragon Star. That was a little too far for me. I did want to say though that there's a reason that Jess is my favorite, and that is I have always been a fantasy person, never 40K. Like I begrudgingly played 40K, and even when I did, I was like super vanilla blue ultramarines, like just like I didn't care. Whereas fantasy was so good, and I loved it so much.
Not only am I fantasy, but I play Harlequins. How about that? So that's like my favorite.
That is very different. I don't even know if they exist right now in the current iteration of the game.
There was
a new Eldar Codex recently, but I haven't checked out. So
yeah, I haven't played it in a while.
Steven, I'm not surprised knowing you that you play like a Harlequin troop in Warhammer because
Oh,
I'm not surprised either. Because they're insane. They're great.
I'll say this though. Currently, Age of Sigmar, like they replaced Warhammer Fantasy with Age of Sigmar. I'm not as big a fan of the setting personally. I have slowly gotten over it. I think it helps that like the old world and stuff like that has come back. But Age of Sigmar right now is actually a fantastic game when compared to like 40K. It's actually really fun, which I kind of hate to say because I do miss when fantasy was like the ascendant version of it. But Age of Sigmar is definitely, I think, right now in a much better spot than Warhammer 40K.
The other thing that GW does that like would be like so sacrilege is like imagine they came out with an edition and they were like, everybody, the marshals are so powerful in this edition and everybody's got to go buy all the marshal books, and then they're like, psych, we're coming out with a new edition and marshals suck, and this is the caster meta edition, you got to throw those books away, you got to switch it up entirely. Like I played 40K like when flyers first came out, and then it's like you had to get all the Skyfire stuff because it was impossible to hit a flyer without Skyfire, and then you had to get your own planes, and then they were like, planes were a little too powered, we toned them down, and you're like, no, I just spent so much money.
Dude, I have an Imperial Guard army, and at the end of 9th edition, their codex came out, which is like all their army rules and stuff. So they've been using like the index, which is like free rules that very bare basics for like 3 years. And then their codex came out, and you can spend like $50 and you get this codex. It's got all the rules. A month later, 10th edition came out and rendered it all null and void. just no longer relevant. You have to use the new index for 10th edition instead. So you spend like $50 and it's just irrelevant immediately.
My thing was I was playing where you could have a certain battle formation and it basically gave you like free rhinos and drop pods for like all of your squads. So I bought like, I don't know, like 20 drop pods and rhinos. And then like the next edition or the next codex was like, psych, you don't get those for free anymore. And I was like, oh.
That's your fault though. That's your fault. You don't chase the meta, dude. You're not like, because
I did exactly what GW wanted me to do, okay?
Yeah,
which is go spend a lot of money. Actually, Jess, I'll be right back.
Oh, now I'm excited.
No,
Anything could happen.
God,
now.
I know what he's gonna do.
Yeah.
So why don't we? So we've been doing so much Warhammer. I feel like Jess and I and Mark are a little out of it. So let's go back to the other half of Dungeons and Discourse's videos and discourse is D&D. And actually, your last video was fascinating. Basically reiterating what I've been saying for like months now is that it's doing fine. I think the 2024, but it's definitely not like knocking people's socks off. It's not like, oh, this is the thing you have to get and everyone's excited. It's just sort of like, okay, and that's it. Like it's sort of like a Marvel movie. It's like, oh, okay, like he came and went, like, okay, cool. I'm very curious to see where they go from here, because now I didn't get the monster manual. I know it came out yesterday, but I didn't get it yet. And the early reviews are, I knew the reviews were going to be this, is that, yeah, it's good and it's got a lot of monsters in it, but the lore is really lacking. Because if you're going to do a book with 500 monsters, something's going to get cut, and it's going to be the first thing you're going to cut is the lore. So yeah, of course the lore is lacking, unless you made the book 400 or 400 or 500 pages, which they did not.
It's sad because the changes they specifically made to different monsters that they previewed, I thought were all good.
Yeah.
But losing lore is very sad to me as well.
Well, I can see them saying something had to go if they wanted to keep the page count down, which is a shame. So
it's interesting though.
Monster books almost always have like very little lore. I remember when I was writing elementals for the Pathfinder 2 Bestiary 2, and like what I was assigned was like write 4 creatures in 2 pages. And so the entire thing of the assignment, and whether it was a success or a failure, was can you convey the lore of this creature through absolutely nothing other than the names of its abilities and 1 sentence?
Yeah. That was one of your greatest successes as a freelancer, was actually doing that, because it is basically, as someone who was involved with that project and the signing, I didn't technically write the assignments for the elementals, but I can cop to the fact that that's not enough space for those creatures. It's just traditionally the way elementals had been done.
They were just like the small one, the medium, the large one are all the same thing, except it's small or medium or large.
But and now we made them different, and we didn't give you more space.
Yeah, exactly. For Pathfinder 2, we want them to all be their own unique creatures, but they still have the same amount of space as though it were named medium air elemental. Good luck with that.
Well, considering I'm literally laying out Battlezoo Bestiary Elemental Storm right now. It's hard to get that lore in there, especially it's tough. So one of the things I do, so a secret trick is that we do have a sidebar, and the sidebar is actually a very small font. And what I do is I've been having to cut the lore. So what I do is I just take the cut lore and then I put it into the sidebar and then expand it.
I do that all the time.
Yeah, so
that is done in the bins when you can, but sometimes you can't. Here's another good example of the exact same thing Jess was talking about. In Pathfinder 1, this was even worse than in Pathfinder 2 for things getting not enough lore. So I remember when I was looking at doing something with like forest dragons for Battlezoo Ancestry dragons, I'm like, great. Well, I'll look at the lore that Sen HHS wrote for forest dragons in Pathfinder 2. Okay, that's cool. Let's see what else I can find from Pathfinder 1. All right, let's see. Forest dragon. It says a chaotic evil dragon, and then but what's the lore of forest dragons? It's got to have something useful. Forest dragons are fickle and malevolent dragons who live in the forest.
There you go. That's it. That's
While
the
they
lore.
can fly,
Do you-
they prefer to stalk the earth. Oh, right, because it talks about how they have a fly speed, but also a burrow speed in their speed.
Yeah. Yeah.
It didn't say anything else.
It's like forest
They
dragons.
burrow. What else could you
forest
need?
dragons are dragons that like to live in the forest. It's like, wow,
No, you had an
really?
opportunity there to subvert expectations and say
Yeah.
they live in the city. You know, like
No, but guys, it said they were fickle and malevolent, which
Oh,
I
I know.
totally didn't know from that chaotic evil alignment was on there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's like that seems like someone forgot to do their book report or something. It's like I do know that
No,
story because we've
that's-
talked about it a lot, but
But lore is super important. Like, I mean, I would say that the success of Warhammer is just on the back of lore.
No,
and
the-
getting people
100%.
interested in lore. Like,
No.
it's so pivotal and integral.
and
to
so-
close that loop real quick.
Yeah.
Jess,
Okay.
if you want, I will send you this Bretonian box set.
Oh, look at that!
It's got all the.
Oh, that's so nice.
It's got.
When is
Hey,
that one from? Are they
This
like
is-
currently selling those? What's going on with those?
This is called Warhammer: The Old World. They basically brought back the old version of Warhammer
Oh,
Fantasy,
okay.
including the Bretonians who hadn't gotten a book
Yeah.
since like 6th edition or 5th edition or something like that.
Yeah,
They-
yeah.
Is this
They're
your
massive.
atonement for ripping on her archetype?
No, he
it-
regraded it. He regraded that.
I
That's-
regraded it
that's
to A.
fine. Yeah.
No, it's just that
Ah.
I bought all of these big boxes and
Yeah.
I literally haven't opened any of them yet because I just don't have anywhere to I just don't have the time
You
to
got
play. But
FOMO'd. You
yeah,
got
I mean-
FOMO'd.
I got FOMO. Yeah.
I have I bought at one time the like starter set thing with the Bretonians, and I do still have that somewhere. Like if I were to want to put together an army of Bretonians, I'm positive that somewhere in my home I have an army's worth of Bretonian knights. The question is just like, where is the box?
Well, there you go. I'm saying I got to buy. I probably even have like an unopened army painter kit around here somewhere too. So yeah.
No,
but, like,
no, it's all right, man.
All right. All right.
Whoa,
Just-
hold
Send
on,
it,
hold on.
send it.
Jess doesn't want it.
Yeah, well, definitely send it to Jess.
Shipping to Canada is a lot more reasonable than shipping across the
No,
ocean.
it's not. What are you
It's
crazy?
worse than you think.
Oh my god, it's so
It's-
expensive to ship to Canada.
Cheaper. It's got to be cheaper than shipping to the
No,
Europe.
It's not a double
They'll probably
thing.
be fine.
it's about
They'll
the
probably be
same.
fine.
It's about the same. Well, if you go to
Exactly.
UK, you're going
Oh,
to find out when it's going to cost you like $50 to go to
Oh,
Canada.
well, that's nothing. I don't care about that.
Okay, well, that's
Yeah,
what
shipping to Canada is pretty rough.
it's really rough shipping to Canada. Trust me, someone
Mm-hmm.
who does it, I know it's horrible.
So we got a couple super chats. Yeah, so there's one. Speaking of monster book from Giant to Be, when is next RPG superstar? We don't know yet. It'll be not for a while, probably.
What? This year.
Well, Steven, what?
It's going to be this year. It's every other year. This is the other year.
Okay, well, news to me.
Yeah, news to you.
Do we have enough bandwidth? Okay, it's
No.
gonna be this year, guys.
But I have a plan for that.
Okay, and then
Oh my God.
Agile Monk asked a question that's even harder for me to answer than these Warhammer ones, 'cause at least I know about some of those deities, which is important. What is everyone's favorite Scotch of Irish whiskey?
I don't drink Irish whiskey.
I think Jim or Irish. Am I like a complete like basic bitch if I just say Jameson?
No, it said of Scotch of Irish.
Well, Agile Monk said after or
Oh, okay.
of equals
Okay.
or. So there was a correction.
Okay.
Well, mine would be Glenfiddich.
Oh, Glenfiddich.
Personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've
Yeah,
had that.
I'm a
That's pretty
beer
good.
person, so I don't drink Irish whiskey. So
I can't drink whiskey very well, but when I do, you know.
right now, my
right.
favorite beer is Blue Moon, and his professor's favorite beer too. Because whenever we go out, he's like, "Oh, well, Blue Moon." I'm like, "I'll have one too." So that's our favorite.
Is it stereotypical for me to say Guinness is my favorite beer?
No,
Is
you're
that-
just
is that
buying
too
into the
much?
stereotype.
Only growing beer brand, okay? That's all I'm saying. It's the only growing beer brand right now amongst the youth. So that's who I'm with, by the way, the youth.
The youth? Are you a
Still
youth?
got it.
Are you a youth?
Arguable. I mean,
The youth.
So, anyways, D&D, right?
D&D.
Yeah.
Hey, we're talking about geek stuff though. But this is, you see, if you want to be cool, this is a cool conversation about geeky things. And if you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, wow, this is the most boring conversation I've ever heard, I hate to break it to you, you're not cool. You think you're cool, but you're actually a geek poser.
So there's a great Knights of Last Call analogy to that. Okay, the other day we were running a Torchbearer pre-session, I guess I would call it, and there came a point, and I'm playing with a bunch of my patrons, and I'm also playing with Bob, who is on my channel. He's been on my show, but he didn't really get into role-playing games until like a few years ago. He was a sports guy. You know, when in my Discord, there's like 80% of people, if you put LFG, they think it means looking for group, and then there's 20% of people who think it means let's fucking go. So like, there's this like, you know, kind of like split. And he's in the let's fucking go crowd. Anyways, I was describing something and he asked a question and somebody else had a question. I described it. I was like, hey, all right, you know the scene in the tomb, Balin's tomb in Moria when blah, 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 blah. And everyone's like, yeah. And Bob goes, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I go, Bob, I know you've seen this movie. And he goes, yeah, I don't remember anybody. There was the guy with the sword. And we're like, which guy? He's like, I don't know. The guy with the sword. And we're like, do you know who Aragorn is? Is he the one human or the other human? And we're like, Bob, how can you even say that? And it's this kind of idea of like, there used to be this idea of everything was nerd adjacent. You know, you were in the same solar system. If you play D&D, maybe you didn't play Warhammer, but you had a favorite Warhammer faction. You know, like, you know, you're like, oh yeah, well, I don't play Warhammer, but if I did, I would play the Lizardmen. They look so cool. You know, and nowadays I think that it's become, especially when it comes to D&D, it's like you play D&D and nothing else. You know, like your nerd adjacency is close to zero.
Well, it was kind of like a subculture before, right? Like, just generally speaking. But now they've actually gotten so big that they've become like their own subcultures in and of themselves.
Right. Right. And I bet, Stephen, if you went and talked to those people, those young people, those very young people at the game store, you know, if you asked them like, oh, what's your favorite blah, 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 you know, they'd probably say, no, none, you know, like.
Well,
but,
I did ask.
Some of them might have heard of it because they heard of Steven. They recognized him.
Well, I did ask them if any of them played
did you meet fans, Stephen?
I always meet fans.
He met a fan in Denmark when he was trying to get onto a ferry.
I went on, I was on a ferry, and then the guy selling me tickets, my family couldn't believe it. I've never seen them.
He didn't make it up because while he was telling this story in the chat, a guy said, "Hello from Denmark." That was me, and hopefully next time the ferry will be there on time because the ferry was.
Oh my god, he's like the world's biggest Glicker fan. Like he just happened to meet Denmark.
Steven,
yes.
I went to a wedding, I think last year, the year before. And so the context is that this is the wedding of someone that I know, and therefore this is like a nerd adjacent person. However, at this wedding, I was seated at someone who recognized me from Roll for Combat.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty impressive.
So there's a Glicker fan that I met at this wedding.
My favorite Glicker fan story is that Stephen and I were at a convention, and the guys at the Pirate Borg booth recognized me, and then they didn't recognize Stephen.
Nope.
And he was salty, and then he's like, you know me. He's like, oh yeah, we do know you. And he was like, Wah. And then he was like, it's only because you're wearing your Knights of Last Call shirt, Derek. And I was like, yeah, probably. And then the next convention I went to, Stephen wore a Roll for Combat shirt every day of the convention.
That's right. You got to market that brand.
You know what? Sometimes people recognize stuff. Like my aunt was going to, I think, a Best Buy or something like that, and she has the same last name as I do. So when she was getting her thing in and had to put in the name to the person, and they were like, Seifter, huh? Do you know Mark Seifter? And then she was like, that's my nephew. And then they were like, they also watched the show and oh my gosh, yeah, Mark Seifter. And then she's like, wow, I've never seen this happen before.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, when I walk around the convention floor at Gen Con, it's usually me, Professor, Bob World Builder, Ben, Baron, a couple of us, Kelsey Dion, and if out of 100 people, 70 of them will recognize Professor. The other 28 will recognize Bob. Actually, now it's like, say, 50-50. And then the last, like, 3 or 4 recognize me, Kelsey. Kelsey's in there now. She's getting up there. The rest of us. So Professor and Bob blow us away when you go to these conventions. You can't even walk down a corridor without him being stopped. So there you go.
Damn, that's the place to be then, in that crowd, right? Like that's the dream team.
It makes me sad because what he just described is totally true. And I go to Gen Con. I've been going to Gen Con for 20 plus years. And I've seen this. This is like in the last year or so. There'll be like a line wrapped around the block for, Ginny D. Mm-hmm. And then meanwhile, like Ed fucking Greenwood is just like having a coffee in, the cafe or whatever. Mm-hmm. And people are just walking by him. And like nobody knows who he is. Nobody cares who he is.
His face is not as recognizable because he's not on video.
I know, but he's like fuck Ed fucking Greenwood, or like Jeff Grubb or somebody sitting there, and it's just like
if you put Ed Greenwood at a signing booth at Gen Con and
he'll get less people than Ginny D.
The creator of Forgotten Realms, you'll get people to
he'll get less people than Ginny D or Professor Dungeon Master or Bob World Builder.
Yes, that's true.
Yes.
Yeah.
There weren't that many people, Stephen, in that Luke Gygax seminar that you and I went to.
I mean, Derek's been with me. He's seen this firsthand because he walked. I forgot to mention that group too is Derek, but no one says anything to him.
Yes, that is 100% true.
I joined you in one of those groups for like 30 minutes, but then we weren't actually walking the floor. We were just like standing in one spot chatting. So I left so I could see the booths.
Yeah, I do remember that.
So you're those assholes that just sit there and talk in the middle of the convention floor,
and we like take up as much space as possible. Yeah. That only happens.
Right, you would take extra space because people who recognize Professor or Bob will come up and glom onto the group.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Stephen was like, "Oh, we'll walk the floor. Join us." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, this is my time that I have allotted that I want to walk the floor. I'll join you." And then we did not make sufficient progress walking the floor, so I left.
Well, they kept. Yeah, I remember that. They kept. I don't know. I think we were waiting for someone or something. I don't remember. Anyhow, there was a super chat.
We got a super chat from the Soft Serve Sultan that says, "What is your favorite TTRPG mechanic that you've never seen repeated in another game? Mine is how initiative works in Street Fighter from White Wolf."
Oh, I don't even know how that works.
The Jenga Tower from Dread.
Oh yeah, that's
like...
good.
I don't know if you can repeat that in another game.
You could, but it would just actually be blatantly ripping it off. Unlike what I said previously in this episode, where I'll always believe that something was a convergent design that was not ripped off.
Can I give a mechanic that I've just never seen done before that I think would be kind of cool for an RPG? Can I give that? Because I don't think of any,
we can
but,
see if we found an RPG that has that mechanic.
There you go. Okay, so how about this, right? Everybody has a colored die, and everyone puts it in the bag. And when you're determining initiative, you just pluck a die from the bag. And whoever's color comes out, there you go. So you don't know in what order you're actually going to go in.
Interesting.
There you go.
I've never seen that.
So a way of randomly determining initiative by pulling it from a bag.
From a bag, yeah.
I've seen games that have a bag pull as a randomization before, but not for initiative. For example,
board games do it.
Yeah, the board game Goblin Fireworks fight that Paizo put out is entirely bag pull randomization, where you get to draft things into your bag, some of which are like defensive items that if the enemy steals from you and pulls them, it skips their turn. And you can steal from other people, and you know what went into their bags. So you're trying to get the best possible bag for yourself by the end of the game.
They call them bag builders. They're very creative.
There you go, bag builders.
There you go.
Mine? I know Bolt Action. I've stolen it from Bolt Action. They do like an activation system. That's a war game, I'm wondering if there's ever been an RPG that's ever pulled from that.
Yeah, I mean, what could happen if you use an RPG and you pull from war game mechanics? That's never been done before.
I can't think of anything.
Time is a flat circle. We'll come back around to it eventually.
I can't think of any TTRPG mechanic, really. But I will say the one I do like a lot is how Gloomhaven does the cards. Where they have the double initiative with double actions.
You mean the D20 turns into basically a deck of hits and misses that you can adjust?
No. Every card has a unique number, and then
your card actions. How each card has 2 actions. in
initiative
Gloomhaven.
cards.
Yeah, the initiative cards, and it's both initiative and your actions, and it makes a lot of interesting decisions. I did like that one quite a bit. I thought that one was great.
Yeah, it's been done by other my pick that I'm about to reveal that I'm building up to has been done by other games because Blades in the Dark has become Forged in the Dark, and now there are a multitude of Forged in the Dark games. But I still absolutely love the flashbacks from Blades in the Dark that lives rent-free in my brain at all times. There's no time of day where I'm not thinking about the flashback system for Blades in the Dark.
Really? Is that what you're like? You're going to sleep?
System.
You're like, I'm going to sleep now.
Yeah.
Flashback.
That's all a dream is, right?
I know she doesn't. She doesn't like count sheep. She counts flashbacks.
And the funny thing is, there were other systems that came out. I think before Blades in the Dark that also had similar flashback systems as well. So like that's
I'm
what
not
I mean about
surprised by
like
that.
about everything like always coming out.
Blades in the Dark.
Blades in the Dark was 2017, right? It was kickstarted in 2015.
Yeah, but it was around on Google Plus since like 2010. So like,
Okay. The Leverage RPG came out in 2010. It was written before that and had flashbacks.
I do think it was inspired by Leverage, the core
It
tech.
might have been, but it also might have been Convergent game design that was not inspired by Leverage RPG. But the point is, I think that if you were going to make a heist RPG,
Huh? You woke me up. A heist?
yeah,
You
so
say
if you're going to make a
heist?
heist one like Leverage or Blades in the Dark, that you were going to have flashbacks in it. Like, so I can't believe that they weren't inspired or lifted from each other, because anybody who was going to make an RPG based on those, there's no way you didn't include, like you couldn't write a Leverage RPG without flashbacks, because they always have the reveal and those kind of things.
The problem with flashback mechanics in an RPG is the same. I don't think it's a problem. I think it's fantastic, because I don't want to be a thief, right? Because I'm not. Hell, I'm a bad one, I'm sure, and I can plan shit. So the flashback mechanic, right, allows me to emulate the appearance that I know what I'm doing, because of course I planned for this. But it rubs people the wrong way, the same way that make an int check to solve the puzzle rubs people the same way, because there's this population of people who really don't like the idea that mechanics. They're like, no, if I'm going to plan a heist, I want to plan the heist. You know, like I want to be my character. So flashbacks make it feel like you're like, that's just cheating. Now I just have a time machine. And you're like, well, no. And they're like, no, I want to sit there for 4.5 hours. And I want to sit there and we plan for all these eventualities. And the GM is just behind his screen going, oh my God, none of this fucking matters. I didn't even think this far ahead. You guys are just way overdoing it.
When it comes to the actual session, it all goes out the window. The second that they're caught by the first guard patrol.
Absolutely.
Right? It'd be irrelevant. It's all irrelevant.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that's even not just the flashback scenes. What you're describing there, Derek, is also another really good thing in Blades in the Dark that I'm not sure there's anything that quite does it like this, unlike the flashbacks, which is the engagement role.
Right. Same thing.
Where instead of pre-planning the beginning and doing intricately playing the beginning, you just like, okay, guys, we're going to roll once to determine how well the start of the adventure up to the part the GM thinks is interesting has gone. And then trust the GM to narrate a way that fits in with either the super great, it's all under control, normal, it's a little bit risky, and bad, oh, now the situation has been desperate. Narrate us into a desperate, controlled, or risky situation, and then we'll go there. Like, that's definitely one that the people who want to spend 4 hours are not going to like that. They want to spend 4 hours and guarantee it's going to be controlled.
Well,
it's the gamification of it.
Yeah, exactly.
I am someone who will spend 4 hours, but it's not because I want to spend 4 hours. It's because I have been prompted to prepare for this heist. Therefore, I must prepare for the heist. And so I will not leave the preparation phase until I feel confident that I have prepared for all possible eventualities, but I will never have prepared for all possible eventualities. And so even being prompted to make preparations is a problem for me, because it will put me into a place where I cannot leave this preparatory phase now ever. I have to be told like this is no more. No more preparation.
I'm not getting all the way to infinitely getting stuck in it, but I am like that, and a lot of players I've played with are like that too.
I will get stuck until the game master like gives me head pats and tells me like you have prepared sufficiently. The preparations that you have done are good, and they account for like you have uncovered the thing. Good job. We can move on now because you have successfully prepared for the thing that will happen, and you no longer need to agonize about trying to predict what the thing that I'm about to do is.
Okay,
the trick is to play a character who just thinks that it will just all work out on the day.
Right.
Like, I'll work out on the day. Don't worry about it. I'm just gonna go drink.
If I'm playing that kind of character, then that's wonderful. But there was a particular campaign that was like Pathfinder First Edition plus 3.5 catalog, where I was playing a wizard who took the leadership feat, and my cohort was a second wizard.
Yeah.
There you go.
So real quick. Oh, you can go.
I had to be the one who planned.
Well, I think this is an interesting side topic of what mechanics, not just like your favorite thing, but what mechanics are ones that you think just don't work for you as a player. In that same way with Jess, I'll go to one because it was just described as a favorite one.
Wait. Before you do that.
Okay.
We have a lot of people here. I want to do a quick break because I got to get something. And second of all, is that I had the world premiere of the Battlezoo Ancestry Living Legends video created by fan favorite Jack Packard, as well as
it reveals the 14th ancestry.
Yahtzee Croshaw and Jack Packard, who do all of our videos. And no one's seen this, and no one knows what the 14th ancestry is. So just stick with us, watch this, and then we'll come back and we'll answer what our least favorite mechanic is.
Not least favorite, but one you think is great, maybe, but that doesn't work for you. I think that's even more interesting.
Well, that's like 500, so just too many to list. All right.
Hey, you, tabletop gamer. I know that you've played your way through the Tolkien back catalog of elves, dwarves, halflings, and sexy elves. Now you're looking for something new, something a little weird, something that fills in the gap between nostalgia and monstrosity. Well, listen up, sicko. Battlezoo Ancestry Living Legends is here to fill that hole. Featuring 14 unique ancestries for your Pathfinder 2e or D&D 5th edition games like Swarmblood, a creature made of hundreds of other little creatures. Ew. Gargoyles, where you can disguise as an ordinary statue but also become a warrior of the night. Angels, devils, sphinxes, evil eyes. Look at them. I love them and will die for them. And the most chaotic ancestry of them all, fusions. Play as an ancestry that combines multiple characters in one, like a chimera, or two-headed giant, or even a mighty hydra. Is that a party in your character, or are you just happy to see me? You could either share this character with other players or control it all yourself. In front of you is a golden idol placed on a pedestal.
My character does an Arcana check to determine its origin and any possible enchantment that might... I'ma stick it up me bum!
Battlezoo Ancestry's Living Legends includes in-depth information about each creature's culture, society, and history. Plus, you'll get hundreds of digital tokens and illustrations that work with any VTT, and thousands of unique options and custom rules for players or game masters to build the strangest characters imaginable. So what's stopping you from playing as a weird and wonderful legendary creature, huh? Check out Battlezoo Ancestry's Living Legends at legends.rollforcombat.com today.
Don't forget you can get the book digitally or in a beautiful hardcover. I'ma stick that up me bum and all.
Of course I wrote that one. You know what? I was going through the script, I wrote that, added it, and Jack wrote back and he said, "Oh my god, it's comedy gold. I love it." There you go.
So have we made it through?
Yes, it's over.
Yeah.
We're live again.
So Jess was talking about why preparing and being given an infinite amount of time to prepare for every eventuality could cause her to spend an infinite amount of time until the GM said, "You're done." I will explain why Dread, a game that I believe was brilliant game design, is designed almost specifically in a way so that it causes me problems. And the basic issue for me with Dread is, and I've seen it with other players too. Do you have the player in your group who is very conservative with their resources? I'm the person who is the wizard who has come up with some ridiculous combo so I can really do something outlandish, but usually I just use cantrips. And if the situation is going bad, I pull out all the stops. And then we generally win, and then I'll go back to using cantrips. And, maybe more than I should in terms of using resources. The problem with Dread is that it's a shared resource among the party. So imagine if you had a group with the one person who's that wizard who really doesn't want to use their spell slots, and there was also another player who was playing the druid who would just throw a meteor swarm at a goblin. And then the group had shared spell slots in your D&D game. And you can see how the situation is going. Because, in Dread, a part of me got really aggravated when people would just keep pulling for something that was completely pointless and not related to the story. But then the other part of me was mad at myself. I was like, no, come on. They're just role-playing their character. They're having fun. Sure, did they pull out 18 times over a struggle between the two PCs about who was going to, drive the car? They did. But, who am I to be upset that they did that? That's what their characters wanted to do. But the other part of me was like, come on.
Mark shows up.
And then the first time I pulled, because they had done that, I died immediately.
Mark shows up with his own Jenga tower. He's like, no.
So
this one's mine.
So Derek, no joke. I've talked to other people before who Dread is awesome. I'm like, yeah, it's a really good game design. And the solution we came to was to create that a version that I would enjoy and players like me would be smaller or more precarious Jenga towers that have been prorated for the right amount for the game's balance, whatever that is, that are individualized for the players so that you don't have to deal with this situation where you've got the person who pulled it literally 18 times and the conservative person who, when the GM forces them to eventually pull, they die immediately.
Awesome.
That is an incredible solution. We're going to make
hilarious.
6 more Jenga towers, okay, guys? It's fine.
I don't know who makes Jenga towers, but they're like, yes, we approve of this.
We love this one.
Yeah, I also did. So I was talking about, I don't know if this was on there, but I was talking about things that I did to change my Jenga thing. So another thing I did was, so I added if people had conditions, they had to pull with their left hand, or if they were under duress, I put an egg timer. Another thing that I did is because they're usually made of wood, I used a black Sharpie and I made certain blocks more valuable. So there was a strategy to try to get those blocks out. And so if you pulled that block out, you had an extra success. So it kind of made people want to risk it for the biscuit, And so it was kind of, again, it was me gamifying Jenga, but or Dread, but always effective. And then somebody brought a 3rd edition character sheet and they were like, can I have my 3rd edition character sheet play Dread? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And then we somehow converted paladin spells into Dread. We don't know how that happened, but it happened.
I'm looking. I think there's a D&D themed Jenga tower.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me.
No, yeah, I would expect that, honestly.
What mechanics do I not enjoy, or is not for me?
What one?
This is a really hard question.
But
it's a really hard question.
We have Matt and Clark here in chat saying how much they like my Swarmbloods. So you can take some time to think about the argument that you want to present against initiative.
So, by the way,
I read YouTube Matt and Clark's comment here.
Yeah, well, by the way, if you want to, go to Living Legends. Just go to legends.rollforcombat.com. Okay. If you sign up, you will get a free... So you put down $1 and you'll get a free Dragon Eye Goblet when you back the Kickstarter. And you can download Swarmbloods for free as a sample written by Jess. It's all coming together right now. So if you're excited, and fusions, by the way, where 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people can play in one character, That's right. 5 people, Derek.
5 is in the expansion, but you can get 2, 3, and 4 for free already because we're expanding it like we're did with Dungeons.
We're adding more, and we're also adding. Well, I'm not going to say what the other one is, but we're adding some others.
Let Jeff read the
No, I thought you read it. Sorry, Jess.
Oh, I've got one.
Oh,
I
Jess still
have a
can't
mechanic.
Well,
Okay,
Jess, read your thing, and then we'll go to the mechanic.
What's a mechanic? Oh, no, Jess is going to read it. Okay.
Read your thing, Jess.
Oh, yeah. So it says, since reading Snow Souls, which I had no part in this part isn't to do with me. Since reading Snow Souls, all I want is all the elemental ancestries in their own book or in Eldamon 2. And then the part that's about me and is therefore the most important part of this comment, they add, Jess, Swarmblood is my absolute favorite. And you're welcome. Swarmblood is my favorite too. It's the one I wrote.
Mark wrote Snow Souls, and the comment I always see is people like Snow Souls. No, Mark, you did write Snow. Oh, you did write Snow Souls.
I wrote Snow Souls.
Sorry. People said, "Wow, I didn't know you can get that many Frozen references inside of an ancestry." Because oh my God, there's like a lot of Frozen references, which I have no problem with.
My response to the person who said that they have the song stuck in their head is, "What can I say except you're welcome."
You're welcome. That's a different song.
Yes, that I know. And then they responded by being like,
no, now what you've done. Lin-Manuel Miranda and The Rock are now in my head forever. By the way, Snow Souls is my favorite too. Jess, how about that?
Swarmbloods, you mean?
Sorry,
right?
Swarmbloods, my favorite.
All right, well, let's have Discourse say what is your favorite mechanic, or not favorite, sorry, the mechanic that you think is a good mechanic but just does not work for you.
Okay, so I was originally gonna say that like I love all games. I'm happy with like very light mechanic games and very heavy mechanic games. I just love all games. But then I remembered, actually, I do hate and this is probably gonna get a lot of hate for this. I kind of hate dungeons. I kind of hate like the concept of dungeons. Like I get it, I understand it, I completely appreciate it. But I will say there is that moment when you're in a dungeon and there is a way to the right and there's a way to the left, and the dungeon master goes, "Which way, traveler?" And your answer is, I don't care. Like either way seems as good as any other, where you're just randomly wandering around without any direction. I guess I'll just keep going left because eventually I'll get to the end.
That's fine.
You check your clay tablet though. Is that how you determine which way to go?
You dislike bad dungeons, and that's good.
I was about to say, you're talking about bad dungeons, because that's bad dungeon design. Right there.
I've thought about a lot of dungeons.
Well, most are bad.
Dungeons I've been in.
Most are bad.
I like literally did like 12 hours of like dungeon streams this month or last month. No, I get it. I mean, I think it's right. I mean, you are right, and I think that there's a modern problem with dungeons because the game is called Dungeons and Dragons, but the mechanics of the game itself and the way that people are using the game are not aligned with dungeons. And I think what a lot of people want out of the experience and what they want out of the game, and even the mechanics themselves don't really reward dungeons in that way anymore. So that I think is actually valid. Whereas if you're going to go play Shadow Dark, you almost feel like it seems silly to play Shadow Dark and not be in a dungeon because of the way that the mechanics and the system are integrated into it. So I think that's fair.
I will agree with Discourse is that dungeons have to tell, in my opinion, and Mark knows this because
tell a story.
You took the words out of my mouth. They have to tell a story. If there's not a story tying the dungeon together in a narrative, then it sucks. And it's just literally, those are so boring for me. And in fact, we're
like, even with environmental storytelling, just the way you travel through the dungeon should itself be of interest. Like it should be laying that out. So
I'll tell you this. So we're playing Angels of Edgewatch. And in Pathfinder, they're level 19, and I can tell they're like, all right, let's just get it over with. Like they're done. Okay, yeah. They've been playing for too long, and I was a little dreading it because they're going to a dungeon, but the dungeon is really well written, and I didn't realize how well written it was until they're in it. And there's like a very interesting puzzle, and everything they're doing is telling them more about the history of the dungeon, the history of the puzzles they need to solve, and the fiends they're fighting. And it's also very trap focused, and the thief is happy because he's been playing for 3 years and never gets to be a thief, and he's in the spotlight. We have the investigator who's like learning and like really shining, and I'm like, wow, this is really fun. Like I can see how engaged they are and how engaged I am. And like, so there was like what you just said. Okay, so they're in a room, and there's in front of them a prismatic wall with runes. Prismatic wall with runes, and they know they're gonna have to press the runes. They touched the wrong rune. They all did 70 points of damage. So like, okay, don't do that again. And then they went down 2 hallways. They went down one hallway, and it's like the room is filled with cracks, and there's glowing energy in the cracks. And as you walk down the hallway, the energy is getting worse. They went 5 feet to like, screw this, let's go to the other hallway. They go to the other hallway, and there is a mural on the wall telling the story of the conqueror of this dungeon. And I was like, this is just interesting. Like, there's just everything they're doing. Even the hallways are interesting. And that is a great dungeon. And once again, they're all excited and back in the game. And that is 100%. I agree with these dungeons. It's like, what do? Left or right? Oh, you go down a hall. There's a room full of monsters. You kill the monsters. No.
Yeah, you want to make an informed decision.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So like, instead of just be like, left or right, traveler, which one? You can be like, okay, so you reach a crossroads. On the left side, you smell the scent of dried blood. On the right side, there's a dripping sound, and you see almost some puddles of water off in that direction. Which way do you go? And like, you have to think about it. Someone might be like, well, dry blood is bad, but the aquatic combat rules, I never want to deal with those. And there might be like an undersea creature there. Yeah. So I'm just going to go to the dry blood way.
Yeah.
But if there's some clue, they can make an informed decision. And that's part of role playing their character. And it's not just like, did I roll a random D6 to decide which way I'm going?
But I think what it comes down to, and I think you make a great point there, Mark, is fundamentally, how do you view the role-playing game experience? Is the role-playing game experience about generating stories or telling stories with your character, with the other characters, with the GM? And as a result of telling those stories, problems are, encountered. Or is role-playing games fundamentally a problem-solving hobby? And it's about collaboratively solving problems in the game space. And from engaging with those problems, a story emerges, right? And I think that, and obviously there's extremes, right? Where you have people who tell stories and don't do anything involving solving problems, right? They just sit around, and we call it fluffy bullshit time on my channel. But like, they just sit around the tavern and tell stories, and they don't really engage with any mechanics. There's no obstacles, there's no challenges. Or there are people who ignore the story and any sort of narrative element, and they just, encounter obstacles and have fights and just kind of grind through. But I think most people meet in the middle, and I guess it's a question of which one do you see going first. And I view dungeons first and foremost in that problem-solving space. Yeah. Rather than a story creation space. And I think that can definitely lead to people's dislike. So
yeah, like I think the best dungeons, like as Stephen was saying, kind of do both to an extent, like where they're primarily about the problem solving, but they provide capacity for those stories to take place. Like I've had, where people are staying overnight, like in the dungeon, and there's like role playing happening, maybe like in a library. And like the characters like conversing about like the history of the place, like that can really meld those two together. I actually think that there should be more resting in dungeons. Like there should be more like camping out in dungeons.
Oh, I make all my characters. They almost have to, because
they have to. They get inside, you're like, right, get a camp going. Let's do this.
Because all my games, I always have a ticking clock, always, and I also usually close off the exit. There's usually a reason why you can't. It's either you're very frowned upon leaving, or you can't. It's one of the two. It's like you're either going to get through this dungeon and live or die, or there's going to be consequences if you leave.
Is it like a Skyrim dungeon where you loop around and you find the little exit right back out? You're like, oh, there we go.
No, but it's like, because you need the pressure. You can't have the 5-minute dungeon day. Like that's the big thing. I'm like, no. There's no 5-minute day. Like you got 2 days. You got to finish it. go, and you have to stay here, and if you don't, you lose. And my characters know this. They've been playing with me forever. They know the deal. Like, they go into a dungeon, they ain't coming out until it's over, and they're fine with that. And but yeah, it's just like, yeah, dungeons that are just dungeons, because we actually did that. We did a mega dungeon, because someone asked, what about mega dungeons? And we did the Emerald Spire, and we thought it would be really fun, and we hated it. The Emerald Spire is a mega dungeon where each level was written by a different designer, and there's no story tying it together. So
it's bad. I'm sorry if you worked on it and you're watching this.
Yeah,
it's bad.
It's not that good. There's a couple of levels. There's one level that was pretty cool. Believe it or not, the aquatic level was actually really good. I like that one. And there's one where everything moves and turns. There's no interconnected
Sounds like
tissue.
there's a novelty. Like there's a novelty.
Well,
No,
it was really based off of that. Hey, here's this unique problem, and D&D or Pathfinder gives you tools to solve these problems. Like, there's a level where it's darkness, where like everything is shrouded in dark. And so now it's like, oh, you have to use other skill sets and blind sense.
Celebrity authors wrote every floor that people like Ed Greenwood. But the funny thing about that darkness floor. This is a very interesting thing. That was the first floor.
Oh, the worst floor.
I thought it was the second, but you're right.
No. This floor was the first floor.
That's the first floor, and Lisa
here's why.
wrote it, by the way.
No, I didn't write it.
No, I said Lisa wrote it.
Oh, yeah, Lisa Stevens
wrote it.
The CEO. So it was done by the time that I got there at Paizo, and it was released when we were playtesting Occult Adventures, which was the book with the first classes that I wrote for Pathfinder. And it was a first level adventure that was released. In fact, there were only a few that were released right at the same time as that were Pathfinder Society legal. So guess what? That was one of the adventures that like 80% of people used to playtest Occult Adventures. And we got some wild and interesting feedback that was highly based on the fact that it was a darkness level that you could not see through the darkness. Right. So basically, in a lot of games, like in the game I ran, whatever classes had dark vision, it didn't matter which of the new classes they were playing. If they played a race at the time, or what would be an ancestry now that had dark vision, everyone was like, in our group, they were like, the medium was the strongest. It was because my medium was a tiefling and I had dark vision. And then the people who didn't have dark vision, people said that their classes were weak because they couldn't see, and it threw off a bunch of data. It was really funny. But not good, but funny.
I'm like, really funny. It totally messed up our data, and we had nothing useful. Really funny.
I kind of feel like I'm probably the person here who plays the least like dungeons and stuff, because most of the games that I play tend to be actual like modern like horror games. So I play a lot of like Delta Green and Call of Cthulhu, but like modern Call of Cthulhu, World of Darkness and stuff. So a dungeon tends to be there's a guy with a knife inside this room.
What is Mothership or Alien if not a dungeon crawl?
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, it is true. But I think I'm a little bit on the fluffy bullshit side of things as opposed to the pure problem solving.
There you go. What about you, Jess? Any mechanics that get you goat?
Well,
you started this.
I started this being prompted to prepare for something, and then I get stuck not wanting to, because I don't want to feel like there is something that I am supposed to realize, but I failed to realize it. And so now I'm gonna have like a terrible time because I didn't realize this thing. But if I just spend like another 15 minutes agonizing over what is every possible permutation of the way that this could go down, surely I will think of the thing. Surely I will.
Don't go to an
There's
escape
a lot of
room with
analysis.
Well,
there's a lot of analysis paralysis that comes from those types of sessions where you're just sitting in front of a map.
It's worse than if you're just playing a board game, because when you're playing a board game, you're playing it as Jess or Discourse or me. But when you're playing this, Jess, she said she was a wizard. You're playing this like wizard with like intelligence that is so much higher than a human being could ever possibly have. That it's almost doing them a disservice not to spend more time, because what that wizard thinks of within 5 minutes of sitting down probably would take us normal mortals several hours to come up with all the same things. So it's even rougher in that case if the GM doesn't let you use flashbacks or retcons or somehow D20 roll to help you.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, because again, this is like where my emulationist tendencies come in. And also I just hate people sitting around. I get bored as a GM when the players are just like, they don't need me. They're just talking to each other. Like, I'm like, what am I doing here? Entertain me. And so like, like for example, so like one thing I did, this is like a 3rd edition Pathfinder 1 thing, is I said, based off of your intelligence, you got bonus slots, right? Spell slots. And I said, hey, if you're a wizard and you have a high int and you have those bonus spell slots, you don't have to fill them when you do your preparation. You could fill them from your book at the time you need them, because your wizard's smarter than you. So like it was not like you just prepared. You always had it prepared. It just didn't matter until you needed it. Yes, you did take water walk today because your wizard was smarter than you. And it's, for me, that's awesome, because it makes my character feel much more skillful and prepared than I ever could be. But it's funny how many people hate mechanics like that.
So you were letting your players literally play the Schrodinger's wizard that everyone complained about being theory crafted back in those days, where they were like, you were just talking about Schrodinger's wizard who always has the right spells prepared, but in a real game,
only for a limited number of slots, right?
Okay,
the slots tied to their intelligence.
Derek, the ones you get from your high scores are like at higher levels. When you have very high scores, are like half or more of all of your slots.
And if you have a really high intelligence
I wouldn't want
wizard,
that. Like personally, I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want that, because I feel like it's removing agency from me.
Well, right. It's removing problem solving. Right. It's removing the problem solving agency.
I want to be able to, I want to be the one who thinks about that, because I want to choose the spells that I think my character would pick. Right. Like, but beforehand.
Right.
But I don't play wizards.
Yeah, I do like this solution, because I have all of the rest of my spell slots for me to do my personal problem solving, and then I have the rest of my spell slots that I still need to do problem solving. I still need to, in the moment that the problem arises, think of a solution that can be solved by casting a spell. So the connection of situation plus spell that would overcome situation still needs to happen. It just didn't need to happen in advance. I am allowed to come to that conclusion in the moment. And I like that a lot. I think that's good.
Yeah. And I'll also say that there's an old school kind of concept to that, right? Which is like, player get good, right? Like, it's like, like, hey, I want to punish.
Ivory Tower, right?
Yeah, you're right. I want to punish the person who didn't know what to prepare, right? And I used to maybe be more like that, and now I'm definitely not, like where I'm like, I don't care, like if you're good at this game or not,
Actually,
So,
I got another mechanic that I don't like.
Still?
Yeah, OSR style mechanics for sure, Mark.
I don't like Vanty and Magic. I don't like spell slots.
I don't like Fancy and Magic either. Yeah, and I know it's controversial. It's one of my hot takes, but I don't like it either.
I'm one of the people in game design who is the most okay with them, by which I mean I wish we had a ton more options other than them to try, because there's so many other things that are cool, but there are some things I like about them in some situations where I would want to use them, and I think a lot of people are just like, burn it down.
To be clear, I think it is absolutely fine in the context of the wizard. Right, this ancient spell book, I'm memorizing arcane patterns into my mind space. But for the sorcerer, the cleric, the druid, it just feels so disconnected from the fiction.
Well, I came to Dungeons & Dragons late, so I first experienced games like Dark Heresy and Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. So to me, a wizard should have an opportunity every single time they cast a spell to burst into flames or summon a demon by accident and immediately die, right? Like, to me, magic should always be dangerous. It's a sword without a hilt, right? So you use spells under sufferance. You don't often want to cast spells. That to me is, I think, is a lot of fun. But then, Dungeons & Dragons, I think, would fundamentally fall apart in such a context.
Well, I don't know. So imagine, if you will, a Heartbreaker Dungeons & Dragons style fantasy RPG that we're building here, right? The wizards use a Vancian style. They prepare from their book. The sorcerer class is just what Discourse said. Just random, weird stuff happens. You don't even have slots. So you theoretically could keep going until you blow up. But once you blow up, you're going to have to stop.
And you can push it. You can push it to make it more likely you'll blow up.
Naturally,
exactly.
Of course.
To get more strong, powerful effects if it works. Yes. The cleric,
if it works.
The cleric is going to ask for help, and we'll see how their god is feeling that day. And they could theoretically do anything, actually, but it's going to be always within the realm of their deity's situation. So they ask for something. It's like, please save us. But, their deity is the deity of undead. So maybe it does that by bringing their dead ally back to life as a zombie or something like that. And
so you got you tell them the result, like the kind of what you tell them the result, and then they decide how it happens.
Yes. Okay. And in this system, the druid is drawing magic from the land. So they don't even get up to speed being able to cast their strongest spells until later on in the fight. But they also don't, they don't have to prepare in advance and they don't run out. So you could do this, right? You could.
That sounds fun. That sounds. I like that Heartbreaker.
I ran a one-shot session for some of my friends one time, where the premise was that they woke up on the banks of the River Styx. They had no memory, and they were like level 11 or 15 or something characters. And I gave them blank character sheets, and when they went into combat, they both had spells. But if they wanted to cast a spell, they would describe to me the effect that they wanted out of the spell. And if they had a spell that would do that thing, I would tell them, you cast this spell, you can write it on your sheet. And if they didn't have that spell, then I guess you failed to cast a spell. So like, I want to cast a spell that will deal damage to these enemies. Oh, okay, you discovered that you have Fireball.
Yeah, that's the best.
That's cool. That's fun.
Cool.
I ran a one shot that was similar, actually. People randomly chose, they went on TV tropes and randomly hit a button to select a random trope until they had like 5. And one of those people had one that was like, I didn't even know I could swim, which is for the trope of a character who just suddenly realized that they have a skill that they didn't realize they had. So I did the same thing that you did, Jess, except I gave them a character sheet. It didn't list any of their numbers in any of the skills that were in the game. It's actually a Mutants and Masterminds game based on fairy tales. And then I listed what their powers were, but not anything about it other than just like one of them was like not in front of the children because they were playing like a Ruby Rose, like a princess character. And it forced people to like use non-lethal attacks and also like not swear and other things like that. And so they eventually figured out what some of the abilities were by just using them randomly throughout the game.
Yeah.
I actually have mine, and I just thought of one. So this actually happened in the game that I described. That so there's definitely a puzzle that they need to solve. And I also know for a fact that at least one or two of the players in real life will want to do this themselves. They actually want to solve this puzzle. And they want to work it out because they're puzzle people. But then one of the other players who is not a puzzle person said, can we just figure this out? Would our characters know? He just wants to roll and just say, my character, can they just figure it out? And luckily, I was able to say, because they're in a place that's 3,000 years old, and I'm like, no, your characters don't even have the information. You literally don't have the information. And you need to, travel through this dungeon to learn what you need to know to even solve this puzzle. So you as a human playing the character does not have the information, and your character does not have the information because this is long lost knowledge. So no, even level 19 characters, sorry, you do not know. I don't care even if you roll 20, I'll give you a hint. That's as good as it'll get. You'll get some hints, but you're not going to just magically know. And that's an interesting slippery slope because I know for a fact that of these 4 players, one of them is very interested in doing it themselves. Another one is pretty interested. One is indifferent, and one does not want to deal with this at all and just wants to hand wave it. And that gets to, okay, are you using real world knowledge or character knowledge? And when should you do which? And I've been in the groups where all 4 characters are like, I don't want to deal with this at all. Can we just hand wave this? Because we all hate puzzles.
The answer is, for that group, you should.
Well,
but
for that
this is
group,
a very
we're all
contentious
4,
question.
right.
It's a very good one to bring up.
Yeah.
Because even within game design, even at Paizo, while I was working at Paizo, there's at least one person who was there and who has not only been on the record, but even like written in, I think, a foreword of an adventure. Hey, we didn't put the actual puzzle in here. We just made it a roll because I think people don't like to do puzzles. They'd rather just go through. And other people who created a PaizoCon, amazing PaizoCon puzzle hunts every year because they love puzzles. And always put in puzzles. And you can have within the same company 2 drastically different perspectives and within the same group. That's actually an issue. I think what the best solution is to have a separate side session for the people who like puzzles to do the puzzle, so that other people don't have to sit through it if it's long.
I think it's just part of like the give and take of a game, that like there's always going to be elements that you're not the biggest fan of that happen, that you just kind of have to like let the people who really love it. Like, I don't like combat. So what's going on there? What's going on there, Mark? I'm gonna be like, okay, combat guys, off you pop. Go into your side room. I'm gonna be talking here in the tavern.
So when you're playing Warhammer, you're like, let's skip the combat part of Warhammer.
You're playing Warhammer.
Yeah,
you're like,
let's agree what
too much
narratively would
combat
work here. I'm playing a Space Marine. I think my character would beat yours, actually. So
if you watch the fiction, my Space Marine's way cooler. I can take out like 75 G Stealers.
Dude, he spits acid, okay? So I think we all know who wins this battle. There was a anymore.
I eat your flesh and gain your genetic knowledge.
There was a LARP that I went to one time where we were supposed to solve a puzzle, and I really wasn't feeling it, but I was playing like a wizard, and my friend who I was with was playing like an illiterate fighter, and he wanted to solve the puzzle, but like his character had no place having any part of this. So we were just like, okay, everything that Robbie does is my character's contributions to this puzzle, and I'm just gonna like hang out of character for a little bit.
That's just a good way to do things when the characters are separate.
That's such a classic problem, though, of playing like a sort of like the barbarian is the like really traditional trope, and then like they knew the answer, and they're like, I don't think my character would know, so I'm not going to say, right? Like, because it would resolve this problem. So
So that it's not my mechanic thing, but that is one of my bugaboos, one of my hot takes, which is that people play RPGs, not PCs. And like, I think at the end of the day, it's a game. And we're sitting around and we're playing it. And so like telling somebody like, well, you know, you're not allowed, and they're like, you're not allowed to engage.
It's very serious.
Right. It's like, you're not allowed to engage. No, I have a lot of mechanics I don't like, but I'll say initiative. Because number one, it doesn't matter because you're generating an order, and then most games give you ways to just change it anyways. I'm going to delay, I'm going to ready. And then regardless of the initiative order, everybody goes once. And then the worst part for me is that you go in and there's this big, you know, a dramatic moment. The oaken door shatters, splinters of wood. The ogre comes barreling in, orcs surge behind him, and it's like, we clash forward. And it's like, okay, now let's do random number generation and bubble sort. You know, and it's like, wait, who got
roll a die?
Who got a 25? Okay, all right, I got a 14. No, I got a 15.
Yeah.
No, wait, you rolled a 15. What was your actual score? Oh, it was 19. Okay, so you go before him. Well, I got a 19 too. Okay, who has the higher initiative modifier? 5. Okay, who has the higher dexterity score modifier? 3. Okay, so we'll put you first. All right, you're going first? We've finally established it? Okay, great. Mark, go. I delay. And I want to fucking kill you.
So, you know what? But with Discourse's bag idea, you could say, the door smashes open as it overcharges through, and then you pull out as you're saying that, oh, it was actually Mark's thing.
Yeah.
And Mark, you're the first one to notice that happened, because you could have been doing that at the time.
You can put in 3 colors for the GM, so they're 3 times more likely than any individual player to go. So you can start playing with the probability by throwing in different colors into the bag.
The more I'm thinking about this idea, I really like it. I'm thinking about it. It's really interesting.
It's fun because you also don't know who's going to come up next.
I've seen this. There's a lot of actually. What game is it? There's a couple of board games.
You're talking about adding props to an RPG. People will riot. They'll riot.
Well, yeah, you're
right. It's a prop. People hate props. D&D is only dice, Steven. If you start including cards, it's a fucking board game, and you're going to be strung up by your petards.
I hate to break it to you. It's all online now.
We shouldn't try to find out if anyone else has done it and just all agree that was my idea.
Okay. Well, I actually already know a couple of board games that do that. I hate to break it.
Killing me here, Steven. What the hell, man?
I thought we just agreed that this was a Discourse exclusive.
Agreed. Well, for a TTRPG,
right here,
for a TTRPG, yes, but not for a board game.
I normally am not too bothered by initiative because, like, either I'm playing in person, and so I'll tell the game master my number, and then I'm just gonna eat potato chips for the next like 5 minutes while the game master sorts out their business. Or I'm the game master, I'm gonna collect everybody's numbers, and then they're just gonna like table talk with each other for 5 minutes while I sort out my business, and like it's fine. But I recently ran a Pathfinder Society special at a convention, and I have never hated initiative more in my entire life than this experience, because it is like a timed thing. Like, first of all, it's a convention game, so there's only a certain amount of time. That's fine. I've done convention games before, and initiative is whatever. But not only is it a convention game with a certain amount of time, but there's only a certain amount of time for each combat, because once enough other groups finish this combat, the combat ends. And however long my table spends on this combat, that impacts how many other non-combat things they are allowed to do before we move on to the next chapter entirely. So any time that I spend bullshitting around with my little initiative table, reorganizing them and erasing things on this whiteboard and everything, is time that I am stealing from their ability to enjoy other non-combat encounters. And it was I've absolutely never detested initiative more in my life than game mastering this
specials are very
Pathfinder Society special.
The specials are very unique
They're
and have a
very
lot
hard.
of things.
I'm gonna be real though. Like, I think I'm pretty much dagger heart pilled these days. I'm just like, let's go, guys. You guys go, and then we'll see what happens. And then once someone feels, we'll go to the monster. I think it's such a good system. So elegant, just quick and easy, and like fun to do.
See, I play
It has a lot of advantages,
know each
but
other a little.
it can have disadvantages for that analysis paralysis situation, and with divas, especially. I somewhat more
but
like
I'm a diva, so I love it, Mark.
I was just thinking
somewhat
that.
more like the Fabula Ultima style, where it's similar, but you can't just have the same person keep going over and over again. If you have the one person who's just like, no, I just came up with another good thing that in Daggerheart, they like, if you have Allie and Bob, and Allie always wants to do something and Bob is pretty reticent, you can just wind up with an encounter where Allie does every action and Bob never goes.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in Fabula Ultima, eventually Bob has to go because everybody goes once before the Allie can go again.
What if the DM like just does a bit of spotlight management, notices that, and just points at Bob and goes, "Go, Bob!"
Right.
And
And
then the GM has to do that. The game isn't doing that inherently in itself.
Yeah,
correct. And
you
then
wind
if
up
you're
getting into an interpersonal dispute,
right,
to
and
try
then
to fix
if you're asking the GM to be a responsible adult who's mindful of other people's needs,
Okay.
then you're asking way too fucking much, apparently, because that's not the way games work.
Also, by the way, I play online, so this has never been an issue because I press a button and initiative is automatically designed.
Well, sure,
That's true. No, that's true. That is true. That's true.
But it is funny.
The other thing about my experience at this Pathfinder Society special is that I've been playing online for like the last 4 years, and now I'm like under the gun, like every single second that you spend calculating initiative is robbing this table of their chance to accumulate points.
It sucks. No, I actually. So the best part about it is that I don't know why, but the monsters always win initiative, and my thief. And this guy has, legendary perception. He's like, how am I losing? How every single session he complains. He never, ever wins initiative. And I'm like, this is kind of crazy. Like, he comes close, but he just, because the monsters always seem to have better initiative. It's really kind of amazing.
What about the GURPS way, where you just have a speed, right? And then people at a certain speed level all go at the same time. So if you're just faster, then you'll always go first. How about that?
No, I really like your idea because you see, I like chaos in my games.
A little bit of randomness.
A little bit. And not only that, it keeps people awake and it keeps people interested because the worst thing is what Jess just said of like, oh, I go eat my potato chips for the next 5 minutes. And in fact, this is actually why I hate being a player because I don't like waiting around. That's why I like being a GM. But if you add the randomness to the combat where no one knows what's going to happen, you actually have to pay attention because you never know when you're going to go, and you have to pay attention to the battlefield because things are going to change, and you need to figure out. So you can't just pre-plan. You actually are going to have to play, just on the fly. I really do like that idea quite a bit.
But you can have a class trait that throws in an extra one for
exactly.
You. Stuff like that. There's way to play around the back. Yeah.
I don't.
We should talk, Steven. We should talk.
There you go.
Just FYI, I do have to leave in about 10 minutes to get to my racquetball game.
Yep. Okay.
Yes, Gabriel in chat says Hackmaster initiative is the coolest. Tell them, Derek. So in Hackmaster, the initiative starts at 0. It's called the count up, and you count up by 1. And every person can like move their token, their mini, 1 square every second. And so like you're literally all moving kind of simultaneously. And then like if you swing your sword, depending on how big your weapon is or how quick your weapon is, you can't swing it again for like another 5 seconds or 7 seconds, like in the count. So if you swing your sword on count 13 and it has a speed of 7, you can't swing it again till 20 and make an attack. But then like when I go, okay, the count is 2, you go and you're like, okay, I'm moving here, you're moving here, you're moving here, but you're only moving 1 square. It's only 1 5-foot square. And then you go, okay, count 3, move, count 4, move, and everybody's moving their thing. And in person, it's kind of awkward, but I bet on a VTT, it would actually be really awesome because, you know, it's much easier to script.
Yeah. I find Exalted, if anyone has played Exalted 3rd Edition, I love that game. It's an incredible game. You're basically playing like superhuman people in a fantasy context, but it's got the most frustrating initiative system in the world because basically initiative works when you deal damage using withering attacks. It's like a specific category of attack. It gives you more initiative points. And then when you do decisive actions, you spend your initiative. So you're trying to build your initiative up as much as possible with your attacks and then spending it all like a combo kind of system. And in theory, it sounds fantastic, but in practice, it is so much like just tracking of this like number, and people are constantly moving up and down the initiative system. And it's just impossible. Like in actual practice, like on the table, maybe at a VTT, it could be okay. But on the table, it's just impossible to keep up with.
It turns out VTTs can forgive the sins of many TTRPG awkwardness.
Many.
Yes, but they lose the soul. They lose the being around the table.
Yeah. Agree.
Yes and no, but you know what? It's gotten to the, you know what? I'm starting to get to that could be another topic. Add it to the list, Mark. Is what you lose in the soul, you gain in speed and efficiency, and there's something to be said about that.
If
you're a calculator.
Speed. Yeah.
If you're a calculator, I'm not calculator, Steven. I need the soul.
I am a calculator.
I don't want to just be fast.
And so is Mark. Mark and I are both calculators. Yay!
But I still care about the soul, Steven.
Well, I didn't say I was
usually
a soulless calculator.
What am I doing there?
Yeah. Yeah. That's total human move right there.
So chat wants to know what conclusion we've come to on the topic of the stream.
Oh, I said D&D was never cool, and if it was, I think that you know, and I also think that again that not that it's clickbait, but like even the statement from Mearls wasn't really implying that TTRPGs weren't going to be cool. It's that D&D has lost its you know, it's sort of lost its mandate of heaven, as I think the term Mearls used, right? And that it's no longer this sort of I am unbroachable, I am sacrosanct, right? Like the veil, that illusion has sort of been dispelled, and people realize, oh, this is just a terrible potential company, just like all the other companies. And oh, hey, look, there are other RPGs, and we should explore some of those. So D&D might be theoretically not cool anymore, but I don't think it ever really was. That's my.
I think it became mainstream. Sure. More mainstream, but still not cool at the time that Mearls was saying it was cool. But also, the word cool has such a broad meaning that I'm not going to begrudge him using it either.
Bowling is mainstream. Is bowling cool?
Yes.
I don't think so.
Oh man, I was on the bowling team in high school.
You're only proving my point, Steven. You're only proving my point.
I was on the intermediate intramural bowling team at Carnegie Mellon, and we won every year. That's all I'm saying. It's very cool.
I think that there was a D&D coolness bubble. And there was a period of time during which the Dungeons and Dragons Converse collaboration shoe was at the height of how cool it would be to wear. And I do believe that bubble has burst. There was a point where the D&D Converse shoe with a little wizard on it and their little ampersand in his orb was like the peak. We have gone past the peak of how cool that shoe was.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. I've been playing Warhammer since I was like 14, so I don't think I've ever been particularly cool or around people who are particularly cool, you know? So I have no judge on that. But what I will say is that I think that D&D, it's a lot easier for me to talk about D&D now to people who are nowhere near the TTRPG hobby these days than it would have been 10 years ago. Like when I was at work and people would say, "What are you doing tonight?" And I would be like, "Well, I'm going to put on a silly accent and roll some dice and see whether or not I can kill a dragon." Like people would be like, "What?" They might be like, "Is that Dungeons and Dragons thing?" But these days, like they'll understand conceptually what I'm talking about, you know?
Yeah. Paradoxically, though, I have found that it is more difficult to get people who are engaged in the TTRPG hobby through the lens of Dungeons and Dragons to explore other role-playing games. Whereas back in the day, if you had a generic person who was kind of a gamer in that sphere but didn't really have that experience, you could say, "Yeah, let's play this game." And it's like, "Oh, what game is this? Monster Hearts or something," you know? And they'd be like, "Yeah, sure, this is fine."
Yeah.
But now they're like, "No, I only play D&D."
Well,
you know? And
it's part of the identity. It's part of the identity that you play D&D, and so this seems like alien, you know?
Do you want to know something wild? My roommate's girlfriend plays in a D20 modern game, like currently, contemporarily. That is a game that they are currently playing. This is wild to me when I discovered this. Like my roommate is. I hated that game when
it came out.
Wait, we're talking about the Gray books.
Yeah.
Wow.
The D20 Boom, D20 Modern.
I don't know anyone who's ever played that.
My roommate is joining this game, and he's telling me, like, I got to make a character for this game. And I'm like, "What game?" He's like, "D20 Modern." I'm like, "Are you fucking serious?
I've heard of it.
Are you saying D20 Modern and you're referring to a different game? Or is this actually D20 Modern?"
I did like how that game had 6 classes, and there was like the strong class, the quick class, the tough class, the smart class, the something class, and like the cool class.
It should have been Lollipop Man. Class number 1, class number 2, you know, Garbage Man, class number 3.
Garbage Man is a prestige class.
Those are prestige classes.
Yeah,
no
of course.
Way, really? That'd be so cool.
It never me. The idea of D20 Modern just
it could be, you know what?
Anathema to me.
I don't know. Last week we were saying how Monopoly was, we were talking about fake Monopoly expansions, and then I pulled up a real one, and Jess couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I accidentally designed a Monopoly product.
Wait, there are Monopoly expansions?
Yes!
Just made up a fake idea about you for Monopoly. You don't have people when they land on go to jail and be like, "Well, I'm going to do a mini game about not going to jail or what happens in jail." And then people
like Talisman,
they just came out. There's
like a corner board.
Yes, there's a corner board, and then you can go to super jail. That's right, super jail. It's not just jail; it's super jail.
Guantanamo, then. That's where you're going.
Yeah, see, I was trying to use this as an example about how the rules of a game matter because you're not actually playing the game if you're not engaging with the rules. And so if I'm sitting down to play Monopoly and I land on the go to jail square and actually I'm going to run from the cops and they need to do a car chase with me, none of that car chase is playing Monopoly. And then Steven is like, actually, that's a Monopoly expansion.
That is playing Monopoly. That sounds like you're playing Grand Theft Auto, but that is actually Monopoly.
And then both Mark and Jess were like,
"That's the worst thing I've ever heard." That's the worst thing I've ever heard.
That's the greatest thing I've ever heard. This is making me want to play Monopoly for the first time in my entire life.
Well, there's 3 expansions, so you can really play Monopoly. There's
Are they all about evading the police, committing crimes?
One's to get out of jail, one's the free parking expansion, and what's the third one?
Free parking expansion.
Yeah. Literally the space that existed to do nothing.
Right, yeah, like
its own expansion.
Get out.
Oh god!
Jail.
It's like what level of this parking complex will I stop on?
These days, it's really hard to find parking for free.
Wait, here.
Cities are so congested.
Okay, there's the go to jail expansion. There's the buy everything expansion. Now everything is for sale. And the free parking jackpot expansion. Press your luck and pile up the cash.
So it's taking one of the worst house rules of all time and then making it into its own dedicated expansion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hold on. Whenever they say everything is for sale, like, do they mean everything?
Here, I'm
Does
putting
that mean chance and community test and jail?
It says everything, and it like emphasizes everything.
If jail was for sale, it would be more realistic, like in real life with for-profit prisons, right?
Does like the Monopoly man make you an indecent proposal at some stage in this expansion?
I don't know. Wait, I'm trying to link it, but the link is too long.
And now we've lost Jess. She went.
Jess is like, no,
we're about to lose Derek.
I think she's up to get the expansion to show us.
Oh yeah.
Although it does remind me, I can't remember where. I don't even remember why or where I was, but I was at Gen Con, and it was like one of the coolest, nerdiest things ever. It was a group of strangers, and I think I was playing with them, and I went to the person and I went, well,
Jess is back.
How do you feel? Do you want to take a chance? And they went, no, I want to take a community chest. And I thought that was like such a great line.
I'm going to remember that one.
Oh, that one stuck with me because it was clever and it was stupid.
That is so good.
Yeah. It was good.
But look, so whenever I first got into role-playing games, to bring it back, Pathfinder was Dungeons and Dragons at the time. So this was like 3.5, right? D&D. Everybody that I knew, because I got into role-playing games through like my university club. So everyone there wasn't playing Dungeons and Dragons. They were all playing Pathfinder. Like it had replaced it entirely. And it wasn't until like 2014 where people started playing D&D again. But I played Pathfinder before I played D&D, and it was introduced to me as Dungeons and Dragons. This is just Dungeons and Dragons, basically, is how it was introduced to me, but better. And I was like, okay, that sounds good.
Interesting.
Because it was so similar, right?
Very.
I think people just wanted third edition, but better, and that's kind of what they got.
Until they added all those archetypes and ruined the game.
Well, it's part of the fun.
Sorry, Mark. Sorry, Mark. I think archetypes are terrible.
You think archetypes are terrible? That's an interesting.
PF1.
You don't have to apologize to me because they were created long before I joined the company. But I think that is of your takes that sometimes are unpopular takes. That may be like one of the most unpopular, because the general consensus among like people who were following along was that archetypes, which Paizo actually didn't intend to put in at first, they just wanted variant class features, and then they kind of got archetypes in Advanced Player's Guide, are considered to be like the best innovation of the edition. Even though I'm going to partially agree with you that some archetype design was not done well, and it traded out things that were not like for like, and it led to people thinking you could trade out like resist nature's lore for like a super powered offensive trait or something like that.
No, it was unnecessary. Third edition /D20/Pathfinder 1 already had this very modular system of being able to pick and choose classes and splash this and splash that. And it had the prestige class system. So there was no need to have this modification, so much of a large modification. It's because, number one, Pathfinder 1 by and large was played by third edition players, which by and large meant it was played by power gaming, car op, munchkin fucks. And two, it's also because people wanted to be the thing that they wanted to be from level 1. Right. And like archetypes let you like swap out all these things and be like, I'm a gun wizard from level 1. There was no like, you have to play as a wizard for a while and then get a prestige class and then gain your abilities. And
yeah, you didn't have to wait until level 9 to be like certain prestige classes, like an arcane trickster or something.
Have I opened up like a sectarian wound here?
I like archetypes, but I think that archetypes should not have replaced prestige classes. I think that Paizo should have continued to make both. I think that there are many archetypes that should have been prestige classes, and the format of the prestige class should have continued. But there are also some archetypes that are actually just nice as an archetype.
They weren't all terrible, but by and large, I did not like them. And I didn't like the bloat.
Yeah, some of them filled a game. Some of them filled a game place where having them as an archetype was appropriate to what they were doing for you, and others were things that would have been, in my opinion, better executed in this system that had prestige classes as a prestige class instead of being a prestige class shaped concept that was forced to fit into the archetype format because Pathfinder 1 decided to move forward with archetypes and not prestige classes.
What was the difference between these two things? Like,
so archetypes are something that are like a D&D subclass-ish, where you trade out some parts of what you get for something else. But a prestige class is something that you have to multi-class into at higher levels by meeting its requirements.
Sure.
Prestige classes.
It's its own class that's a mini class that's only maybe 10 levels long. then you have to be at least 5th level to even hope to get into it.
The prestige classes were really, really, really cool, and I liked them, and they're very powerful and very flavorful. But you had to play your character a very specific way and level them up a very specific way to get into that, so it was extremely narrow. And I could see why you wouldn't do that.
Plus, as being a prestige class, it sounds like you want to make sure that there's not too many of them because they're meant to feel special, right? Like
Correct.
in and of themselves. You don't want to like bloat out loads of them. Well, it could get bloated, but you don't want that to happen because they need to be prestigious.
Right. And that's how you end up with like pun and stuff like that. But
like archetypes, I think they were a great idea. There was some flawed execution, and they needed to have a stricter design guide right from the start of creating them. But I think that the flaw of them isn't that they existed, like what Derek is saying, but in the existence of some of them that were just a serious problem because creating them required you to have very in-depth far-up knowledge about the classes that you're altering to know what is the most important thing in the class, often which even the people at the company who worked on it did not have all of those pieces between all of the classes. A classic example is Inquisitor class. Its main feature is judgment, okay? But it also has a feature called Bane that's kind of in there that has a lot of its power option. And so a classic archetype stumble in Pathfinder 1 would be that it would replace Judgment for another class's entire kit and not replace Bane and some of the other things that Inquisitor has. And so therefore it would be like, well, why would we even play class X? I can get the other class's entire kit on this Inquisitor archetype that only replaced Judgment, and I still have all this other stuff from Inquisitor. So it was very difficult to use correctly and probably needed to have stricter design guides written. I did write one near the end of Pathfinder 1's life cycle, but it was kind of too late because tons of stuff had been published by then.
Well, I'll wrap up, at least for us, because Derek's got to go.
I do have to go.
I know you have to go, but I would say it's not that it's not cool, but I don't think it ever was cool, but it is now in the public conscious and the zeitgeist, which is a different thing. It's different from being cool. And D&D went from sort of out of the zeitgeist and out of public consciousness into pretty much everyone's heard of it and pretty much everyone knows of it. I'll say it to anyone and they'll know what D&D is, even if most of them never played it, but they've heard of it. They know of it. They know Stranger Things. They might even know Critical Role, and they definitely know the movie, and they know of it. It's definitely,
you know what you just described?
Yeah.
Curling. Right?
Yeah.
Like nobody knew what curling was, and then they made it an Olympic sport, and everybody kind of basically no one went out and curled.
Well,
but they all like, oh, I know what that sport is. It's the one on the ice with the brooms, right? Yeah, right. I watch it once every 4 years.
Exactly.
And it's like, I know what that is now.
Well,
I didn't know what it was before, but I'm aware of it now.
Yeah, but the thing is
if someone said they curl, you'd be like, whoa, you curl?
Right, you'd be like, curl. Wow, where do you do that? Like, how do you get involved with that? I'm interested, but not really that much. I'm not going to come curl with anybody.
Yeah, kind of.
So Meritos had a super chat along the same lines of what Stephen was just saying that said, I think it's more acceptable, which is a big deal. As someone who grew up with the Satanic Panic, it's okay to talk about it in a corporate environment.
1,000% yes.
Yeah.
That's
quite the jump.
I'm also shook that there was apparently a YouTube curling rock stone emoji that Agile Monk put into
Dude, curling in Canada is insanely popular, and it's one of the fastest growing. It's one of the fastest growing sports in America. I hate to break it to you.
Come on, Derek.
Yeah.
Jess, how many times have you been curling in your life?
There's actually a curling.
Jess is the expert here. Jess,
arena
how many times have you been curling?
Near me. Oh, that's right. You're Canadian. Jess.
Do you think that I'm a sporty person?
Listen, I've been told curling is for all ages. It's the pickleball of ice sports, okay?
No.
Okay, I've never pickleballed either.
Oh, pickleball's great. I love pickleball.
I'm not a sporty person.
Oh, my God. I love that.
Are you guys just making up words now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pickleball is great, and curling. There's a curling arena right by me. It's extremely popular, at least in this area.
They call it a
house, whatever they call it, ice house. Yes,
sheet.
Well, it's a combo. It's like they have ice skating and curling and other things.
Of course they do.
Well, and hockey. Well, hockey's still very popular around here. So, but
I know where I would go to curl if I were to
There,
curl.
okay. You know what? That is an acceptable answer.
We got a road trip, Derek.
Because I
We're
don't
gonna
know where I
go-
would go. I don't know where I would go to curl if there's even an option near me. I'm assuming there is because I live where it's cold, but I don't know that that's.
You
the
live
case,
in
but-
Ohio. There's definitely curling in Ohio.
Yeah, well, maybe.
Oh, I
Maybe.
guarantee it. Well, it's going to be racquetball. You know what? I will tell you. I think there's probably more curling places in America now than racquetball places.
I mean, a lot of those places, like all the YMCA's and JCCs, have like curling. Or, racquetball.
this guy ragging on curling off his racquetball.
I know racquetball. Racquetball
okay.
used to be in the
Red.
80s.
Racquetball-
Everyone did it.
Racquetball is dead.
It's dead.
Racquetball's
Oh,
dead.
it's totally dead.
Racquetball's
It's
dead.
wait,
I
it
never
takes
heard
up
that.
a
it
huge
was
amount of
huge
space.
in the 70s and 80s. It was very large. But
everywhere.
Yeah.
Handball and racquetball was everywhere. It takes up so much space that like no one does it. It's just it's completely uneconomical.
Well, it was just a great sport, especially for where I live, where 5 months out of the year, the air hurts your face when you go outside. So it's like,
Right.
It's indoors. You could be active and whatever. But in any case,
Well, that's why pickleball's
where
taking
I
over.
live, we would just play football in the street and kick a ball off a wall. That was it. That was
Right.
the exercise. That's all everyone got.
we need more. I need my racket. I actually just bought a new racket, so I'm excited.
Oh, you're excited.
Yes, it's made with carbon fiber and graphene.
Wow. Well,
Space Age.
all right. You go play racquetball with your +2 racket of fibrous
Smiting.
of fighting.
No, smiting.
Smiting. Oh, your +2 racket of smiting. So when you win, you'll know it was the racket and not you.
Correct.
But
And thanks for coming on, everybody.
Yeah.
We could have 5 people. This is wild.
I know. I know.
Have you ever had 5 people on before?
Yes, once. In fact,
okay.
I just realized I actually had a layout for it. And I didn't have to do all that like finagling. I was like, crap, I
It was
literally had the
also
layout.
when people came on
Whatever.
randomly later on.
Yeah, we have 5. I
Yeah.
don't have 6. I don't have a 6-person layout yet. Well, we'll see if we can get to that.
But if you're watching this and you're like a YouTuber who often watches our channel and wants to try to see if Steven will add you, not now, we're ending, but like on a later episode, we challenge you to force him to get it up to 6.
Yeah. Well, whenever a
Just keep
YouTuber
going.
says they're on live, I'm like, join, and they usually not always, but usually
Wait,
do.
am I a
He peer
YouTuber?
pressures you.
Jess,
Set me
you're
threats.
turning.
You
Wait,
He sent me threats.
someone
Jess, you are, because you
recognized
said
you
you were
from
recog-
You
YouTube.
got recognized by YouTube.
You are a
From
YouTuber.
right?
No.
That's
You're
true,
an
that's true.
influencer. You're an
Influencer.
Oh my
influencer.
I was recognized from my influential YouTube stream Roll for Combat,
That's right.
Right.
which I own and manage.
That's right.
You're changing hearts and minds with your blood swarm host swarm got him.
More blood.
I don't remember what it's
Swarm
called. Swarm
You were
blood.
close. You just had the words reversed.
Okay.
Swarm blood-ish thing-majig
Exactly.
type stuff. You got to do a ranking of all these ancestries, Derek.
Oh my god, that would be a stream.
Yeah.
I want to do more Eldamon streams.
So do I.
People,
I want you to
people
do
voted
more
for it. They
Eldamon.
donated money to you
I know.
for that, Derek.
I know. I was saying I got to do another. I got to do another Eldamon stream.
I know, you could have Mark on and explain it.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that.
I could actually come on though instead of just doing it from chat if you want.
Yeah.
I worry that if you're on it, we would talk too much about the mechanic and like
maybe.
not actually get through anything, because that's what tends to happen.
Maybe have Jess on. Ooh.
Like a guy who just published his game on itch.io. I had him on. It was his first time ever on a live stream, and I had him on the channel yesterday. And he's like, I'm good to go for a long time. I'm like, well, this can go a long time. And then like 4 hours later, he was like, I'm destroyed. Like I'm wrecked. Like that took everything out of me. Like I can't believe how draining that was. How do you do this? I have to go to the bathroom so bad. I'm sorry. Bye. Beep. And I was like, okay.
Amateur.
but he did great. He did great. So yeah, cool. Check out Trespasser.
Oh, that's what that was. I didn't know what Trespasser was.
It's a tactical combat game plus a kind of OSR style procedural game.
Sounds
So,
pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. But you can check it out on itch.io at tundalist.itch.io/trespasser.
So last week I did ask
Not even my game. I'm plugging.
When are you going to be playing the assisted living the role playing game where you're playing
just a hack of Brindlewood Bay? Probably is all you need to do.
Hell.
Well, did you see? You're actually there's more to it. You're in a retirement home, but it's actually being taken over by eldritch horrors, and you have to investigate it. So
Got it.
It sounded a little bit more interesting than I thought.
It's kind of like They Live, but with old people.
Yes, that's a perfect analogy. I love They Live. That's great.
That could be fun. That could be fun. Yeah,
that would be fun. But Derek has to cover this.
You have to remember, I actually know pop culture references.
I know. Last week I was making fun of Mark the whole time.
They live.
Oh,
yeah, I was going to say,
that's
like,
not
they
dated.
live.
That's very dated.
No.
It's a bit dated.
Everyone watching this except Mark knows what They Live is.
I promise you, they don't.
I promise you, they might.
Make a poll as we're leaving.
I gotta go.
All right.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Until next time, if you want to battle the zoo, you have to roll for combat.
But don't, because initiative sucks.
Oh!